Tonight, if you want life to respond, stop trying to make life respond. I know how strange that may sound when there is something you want so deeply that your whole being seems to lean toward it. Perhaps it is money, and you have looked at the same figures so many times that the numbers seem to follow you into bed. Perhaps it is a person, and you have waited for a word, a letter, a change of heart, some small movement that would tell you the silence has ended. Perhaps it is work, an opportunity, a decision, a door that seems to remain closed no matter how sincerely you have imagined it opening. Perhaps there is no single thing at all. Perhaps you are simply tired of waking into the same arrangement of life and wondering how much longer you must wait before something finally answers you. And when a man becomes tired of waiting, he usually makes one mistake. He increases the pressure. He thinks, perhaps I have not imagined enough. So he imagines more. Perhaps I have not affirmed enough. So he repeats more. Perhaps my desire has not been strong enough. So he tries to want more intensely. He watches every event. He measures every silence. He examines every conversation for evidence that something is beginning to move. He goes to bed asking whether he did enough during the day, and he wakes asking whether the night produced anything. Soon what he calls faith has become another form of labor. I do not want that for you tonight. If you have come to this night tired, then let tiredness be the end of an old method. You have pushed long enough. You have watched long enough. You have asked the outer world the same question long enough. Tonight, you will stop trying to make the world answer. And in that stopping, you may discover a kind of power that strain could never give you. For the desperate effort to make something happen always contains a hidden confession. It says, the thing is withholding itself from me. The world has it, and I do not. I must somehow persuade life to release what I lack. Do you see the state concealed beneath the effort? The man is not living in possession. He is wrestling with absence, and he can wrestle for years. Before we go farther tonight, I want you to make one small outward choice that can stand as a symbol of the inward one you are beginning to make. Subscribe to this channel, not as though a button itself possesses any power, but as a simple declaration that you are willing to return to ideas that remind you where the true cause is found. Let it represent your decision to stop living only from appearances and to become more deliberate about the state you occupy before sleep. Make the action lightly, and then let it go. Yes, subscribe now if you wish to continue walking with these teachings, but do not give the act more importance than it deserves. The real decision is not made by the hand, it is made in consciousness. Let the outer act simply mark the moment when you say inwardly, I am no longer going to spend every night asking the world to change while I remain the same within. Now forget the subscription. Return to yourself, because the world does not need another demand from you tonight. It needs nothing from you, and you need nothing from it for these next moments. That may be difficult to accept, because you have perhaps been trained to believe that greater effort means greater power. Men admire visible effort. They understand pushing, forcing, persuading, struggling, arranging. They say, if I want something badly enough, I must do more. There is certainly a place for action in life. If a letter must be written, write it. If work must be done, do it. If a conversation must be had, have it. If an account must be attended to, attend to it. I am not teaching passivity. I am speaking of something else entirely. I am speaking of the inward strain that continues after every practical action is finished. The letter has been sent, yet you keep sending it inwardly. The conversation has ended, yet you repeat it 50 times. The application has been made, yet you sit psychologically at the employer's desk waiting for a decision. The bill has been paid as far as you can pay it today, yet you continue paying for it in worry all night. That is the force I ask you to release, because that force is not authority. It is fear wearing the clothes of responsibility. Tonight, when I speak of forcing the universe to respond, I want you to understand the phrase differently. You are not going to force events. You are not going to force another person. You are not going to force money through some invisible channel. You are not going to demand that life perform for you before morning. The force we will discover is the force of finality. the force of a conclusion within you that has ceased arguing with itself. There is tremendous difference between tension and finality. Tension says, make it happen. Finality says, I know where I stand. Tension reaches. Finality rests. Tension needs repeated evidence. Finality does not ask every 5 minutes whether the decision still holds. Think of a judge who has pronounced a matter finished. Once the judgment is entered, he does not run into the street begging people to believe that judgment. He does not repeat it to himself every 10 seconds for fear that it will disappear. The matter has been decided in his chamber. That is the kind of inward authority I want you to taste tonight. Not shouting, not emotional violence. Decision. Perhaps you are lying here thinking of money. Notice what your mind wants to do. It wants to calculate. It wants to anticipate. It wants to find the exact route. Who might help? What might happen? Where could it come from? How much time is left? The mind calls this practical thinking, and some of it may be practical during the day. But now, at this hour, ask yourself honestly, am I solving something, or am I rehearsing the feeling that I am not supplied? There is a difference. If you have already looked at the figures and there is nothing useful to do tonight, another hour of fear is not financial intelligence. It is occupancy of a state, and the state says, I am the one under pressure. That is the state you will stop feeding tonight. Perhaps it is a person instead. The mind says, why have they not responded? Then it imagines a reason, then another. Then it goes back to an old conversation and searches it for clues. It remembers a tone, a pause, a phrase. Then it imagines tomorrow. Will they write? Will they call? Do they care? Are they changing? The body is in bed, but inwardly you are standing outside another person's door, waiting, listening, asking, and all the while you are telling yourself that you are trying to create love. No, in that moment you are rehearsing waiting. So tonight, step away from the door, not because you no longer care, because love does not require you to spend the night as a beggar of evidence. Perhaps it is work. Perhaps you want to be chosen. You have done what you can, but inwardly you keep appearing before imaginary judges. You hear them evaluating you. You prepare answers they have not asked. You imagine competitors you have never met. You try to make yourself worthy in rooms that do not presently exist. Stop. You do not need another interview before sleep. If there is an outer interview tomorrow, meet it tomorrow. Tonight, cease interviewing yourself. You see, the problem with forcing the world is not merely that it exhausts you. It keeps telling you who you are. Every time you strain to obtain something, you risk repeating the identity. I am the one who does not yet have it. Every time you anxiously ask whether life has responded, you say, I am still waiting for life to decide. Every time you demand proof before rest, you say, the evidence has more authority than my inner state. And then you wonder why peace feels impossible. You have handed authority to the very thing you are watching. Take it back tonight, not violently, quietly. Perhaps the strongest thing you can do is stop asking the mirror to move first. If you stand before a mirror with a serious face and demand that the reflection smile before you do, you may argue with it all night. The mirror is faithful. It is not stubborn. It is not withholding a smile. It waits upon the face. So I tell you, do not curse the reflection. Do not threaten it. Do not beg it. Change the face. In the same way, if life appears unresponsive, do not immediately conclude that greater strain is required. Ask instead, what state am I asking life to answer? Am I asking from possession or from hunger? From security or from alarm? From being chosen or from trying to become worthy of choice? From completion or from endless preparation? Do not answer intellectually. Feel it. You know the difference. There is a particular fatigue that comes from trying to manifest from absence. You are always doing something. You are repeating, checking, correcting, trying to believe, wondering whether you believe, wondering whether your doubt cancelled your belief, trying to remove the doubt, watching for proof that you successfully removed it. This becomes absurd. And beneath all this activity is one simple state. Something must still be done before I can have peace. Tonight, challenge that state. What if nothing more must be done before peace? Not nothing practical ever again. Nothing more tonight. That is all I ask. What if the problem does not need another hour of your consciousness? What if the person does not need another imaginary conversation? What if tomorrow does not need another prediction? What if the universe, if you wish to use that word, does not need to be convinced? Perhaps the only one still arguing is you. Then the end of the argument becomes the beginning of power. Let me give you a picture. Imagine a man who has been knocking on a door for hours. His hand aches. He becomes angry. He knocks louder. He shouts. He says, "Why will no one open this door?" Then someone tells him quietly, "You are already inside." At first he cannot understand. He has become so identified with knocking that he has forgotten to look around the room. Many people do this with their desires. They knock upon the door of love while living inwardly in rejection. They knock upon the door of prosperity while living inwardly in fear. They knock upon the door of success while living inwardly in inadequacy. They say, "Open." And imagination answers, "Where are you standing?" Tonight, stop knocking. Look around inwardly. What would it feel like to be inside? Not to receive everything outwardly this instant. To occupy the state of the person for whom the matter no longer needs begging. Perhaps you cannot yet say, "Everything is done," and feel natural. Then do not force that either. Begin closer. Perhaps you can say, "I do not need to chase this tonight." That may be enough. Or, "I do not need an answer before I sleep." Enough. Or, "I have done what belongs to this day." Enough. Or simply, rest. The words are not the power. The movement of consciousness is the power. The old state moves outward. It reaches. The new state begins to settle inward. That is the first movement of this night. You do not have to become ecstatic. You do not have to believe something extraordinary. You only have to stop pushing. Feel how strange that may be. The mind will say, "If I stop, nothing will happen." That sentence reveals how deeply you have associated strain with causation. You imagine that worry is helping. You imagine that constant thinking is moving the pieces. You imagine that if you stop watching, the desired thing will somehow forget to arrive. But what has all that watching done to your state? It has kept you as the watcher, the one waiting for movement, the one outside, the one without. Tonight, resign from that role. You do not need to watch the road. You do not need to watch the postbox. You do not need to watch the clock. You do not need to watch another person's behavior in imagination. You do not need to watch your own mind with such suspicion. There is no spiritual policeman standing beside the bed with a notebook marking down every thought you have. You may have a worried thought. Let it pass. You may remember the problem. Fine. The question is whether you climb back into the old state and begin pushing again. When you notice that you have, stop. Gently. Not because pushing is sinful, because pushing is exhausting and unnecessary. Perhaps the old mind says, "But I must do something." Then give it something very simple to do. Ask, "If this matter were already moving toward resolution, how would I lie here?" Not how would I celebrate. How would I lie here? Would the jaw be as tight? Would the hands still be gripping? Would the forehead still be solving tomorrow? Would I be rehearsing the same conversation? Perhaps not. Then let one thing change. One hand becomes still. One thought is not completed. One calculation is abandoned midway. One imaginary conversation is allowed to end without your final argument. That is enough. You have stopped feeding the pushing state. And in that small cessation, another state becomes possible. You may begin to feel that power is quieter than you thought. For years, perhaps, you imagined power as intensity, a strong will, a clenched determination, a refusal to rest. But I tell you there is another kind of strength. The strength of the man who no longer needs to keep reopening a settled matter. Suppose you know with certainty that your train leaves tomorrow at 10. You do not spend the entire night demanding that the railway prove it. You may check the ticket once, then you sleep. The certainty frees you from attention. That is the quality I want. Not certainty about every external detail. Certainty of state. I know how I choose to meet this. That much is yours. The event may still be unknown. Your state need not be. Perhaps you do not know how the money will come. You can know that you refuse to sleep as the helpless one. Perhaps you do not know what another person will do. You can know that you refuse to sleep as the rejected one. Perhaps you do not know whether the opportunity will take the form you expect. You can know that you refuse to sleep as someone whose worth depends upon one door. This is authority. It is not control over the world. It is refusal to surrender the authorship of your inner position. And from that position, life is met differently. Tomorrow you may see a possibility the frightened self would have missed. You may say something the desperate self could not say naturally. You may refrain from chasing something the insecure self would have pursued. You may recognize that one closed path is not the whole world. But again, leave tomorrow alone. We are not using tonight to calculate future behavior. We are learning one thing. Stop trying to make the world move. Let the world be exactly where it appears to be for this moment. Can you do that? Let the account be the account. Let the silence be silence. Let the unanswered question remain unanswered. Let the door remain closed in appearance if it is closed. You do not have to kick it. You do not have to bless it. You do not have to deny it. Just stop pushing against it inwardly. Because the very feeling of pushing says, this object has power over my peace. Take your peace back, even if only for this night. There is something remarkable that happens when a man stops wrestling with what is. He begins to discover the difference between accepting a fact and accepting an identity. You may accept. There is no answer yet. You do not need to accept. I am ignored. You may accept. The account shows this amount. You do not need to accept. I am doomed to lack. You may accept. That opportunity did not open. You do not need to accept. Nothing opens for me. Facts are specific. States make them universal. Tonight, leave the fact alone and withdraw from the universal conclusion. That alone can feel like the release of enormous pressure. You are not required to turn one circumstance into the constitution of your life. One silence is not your identity. One expense is not your destiny. One refusal is not your future. One difficult month is not your nature. Let things become smaller. The old state enlarges everything because it needs evidence. The new state does not need to reduce facts to nothing. It simply refuses to make them gods. This is the beginning of the force I mean. Not outward force. Inward refusal. A refusal to continue signing your name beneath the old conclusion. The mind says, nothing moves for me. You do not argue for 20 minutes. You simply decline the statement. The mind says, I will be waiting forever. Decline. The mind says, I must make something happen tonight. Decline. And then return to stillness. The strongest refusal is often silence. You do not have to defeat every old thought with a new one. You can stop the conversation. There is no need to win against yourself. There is nowhere to win. The old state is not an enemy. It is a habit that receives strength each time you enter it. Enter it less. That is all. Tonight, perhaps you will feel yourself reaching again. You will notice the mind moving toward the desired thing, checking it, touching it, asking whether it is closer. When you notice, do not become frustrated. Smile inwardly if you can. There I am, pushing again. Then stop. Return. The bed beneath you does not push. The darkness does not push. The night does not hurry. Let them teach you something. There can be tremendous movement inside stillness. A seed under the soil does not shout. A child forming in the womb does not demand applause. The invisible processes of life are often quiet. Why should your assumption need noise? Let it become quiet enough to be natural. For tonight, I ask no more of you than this. Stop forcing the reflection. Stop demanding proof. Stop trying to move every piece. You have spent enough of your life leaning against the outer world. Let it stand without your pressure, and let yourself discover who you are when you are no longer pushing. Perhaps beneath all that effort there is relief. Perhaps beneath the vigilance there is someone who has wanted permission to rest for years. Give that permission now. Not because the world has already shown you everything you want to see, because rest is no longer going to be held hostage by evidence. Tonight, if you want life to respond, stop trying to make life respond. Let that paradox settle without analysis. No need to solve it. No need to turn it into another technique. Just stop pushing for a little while. Nothing must move before you are allowed to be still. Nothing must arrive before you are allowed to close your eyes. Nothing must answer before you are allowed to stop asking. This is where we begin, not with force against the universe, with the end of force against yourself. There are two kinds of force, and if you confuse them, you will spend years exhausting yourself while calling exhaustion power. The first kind is obvious. It is the force of the man who stands before a closed door and pushes against it with all his weight. He strains his shoulders. He presses harder. He becomes angry with the door. He tells himself that if he can only increase the pressure, the door must eventually yield. And perhaps sometimes it does. But even when it does, he has taught himself one dangerous lesson, that life must be conquered through tension. The second kind of force is almost invisible. It is the force of a conclusion, the force of something inwardly accepted so completely that you no longer feel the need to debate it. A man may shout, "I need this to happen." That is not power. That is need declaring itself. Another man may lie quietly and say within himself, "This matter is settled," and then he rests. That is a very different thing. The strongest assumption is not the one you shout. It is the one you no longer argue with. I want you to understand that tonight. Because many people think conviction must feel intense. They imagine faith as some enormous inner pressure. They think they must repeat their desire until the mind submits from exhaustion. They think certainty means gripping an idea so tightly that no other thought is allowed to breathe. But true certainty has less tension in it than doubt. Doubt argues. Certainty rests. Doubt keeps reopening the case. Certainty leaves the courtroom. Doubt says, "But what if?" Certainty does not necessarily answer. Sometimes it simply has no further interest in the question. This is the kind of force I want you to discover before sleep. Not pressure, finality. Suppose you have been waiting for money. The first kind of force says, "I must make this happen." Then the mind begins its work. Who could help? Where could it come from? What can I sell? What must change? Who owes me? What if the opportunity disappears? You may believe all this mental movement means you are being responsible. But notice the state beneath it. The state says, the matter is not settled, and every new calculation renews that state. Now consider the second kind of force. You attend to whatever practical matters belong to the day. You do what can reasonably be done. Then at night, you stop. You say inwardly, the matter is settled. Perhaps the senses disagree. Perhaps the account has not changed. Perhaps nothing visible has moved. But your statement is not a description of the present evidence. It is a psychological position. You are selecting the end. You are saying, this is where I stand within myself. And then you refuse to reopen the case every 5 minutes. That refusal is force. Not force against life. Force against indecision. There is a great difference. One kind of force tries to overpower the world. The other kind refuses to surrender the chosen state. One is violence towards circumstance. The other is loyalty to assumption. And loyalty can be very quiet. Imagine a man who has decided to leave for a journey tomorrow morning. His ticket is purchased. His bag is prepared. He knows where he is going. Does he spend the entire night shouting, "I am going, I am going, I am going"? No. He may barely think about it. The decision has become part of reality for him. That is why he can sleep. Now compare him with a man who has not yet decided whether he will go. He turns from one possibility to another. He imagines going, then staying, then going, then delaying. His mind is loud because the decision is weak. Noise is not always evidence of conviction. Sometimes noise reveals the absence of it. And so tonight, if your mind has been very loud around one desire, do not assume that more noise is the answer. Perhaps the answer is decision, not a decision about how the world must behave, a decision about what state you will occupy. This matter is settled. I am no longer waiting inwardly. I am no longer bargaining. I am no longer asking the present appearance to tell me who I am. That is finality. Perhaps you are concerned with love. The first kind of force tries to move the person. You imagine them calling. Then you check. You imagine them changing. Then you examine their behavior. You imagine affection. Then you measure silence. You say inwardly, they must respond. But notice what you are still doing. You are placing the whole state in their hands. Your inner peace rises and falls with their movement. They have become the judge, and you call your effort manifestation. No, if you must constantly watch another person to know whether your inner state is safe, you have not reached finality. The second kind of force is different. It says, I know the state I choose. Perhaps the state is, I am loved. Perhaps I am secure. Perhaps I belong in relationships where affection is natural. Then you rest there. You do not use the state as a weapon against another person. You do not say, now they must do exactly what I want. That returns you to control. Instead, you let the state define you. And because you are defined differently within, you no longer need to spend every hour interpreting another person's movements. This is stronger, much stronger. Because your state is no longer dependent upon one external actor. The same applies to work. A man may want a position very badly. He can use the first kind of force. He pushes inwardly. He imagines the employer changing their mind. He rehearses the conversation. He worries about competition. He visualizes the exact office. He tries to force one door. And because that door has become enormous in consciousness, every delay feels like danger. Or he can use finality. He asks, what is the state I truly seek? Perhaps it is being useful, established, respected, properly placed. He assumes that state. Then the position becomes one possible channel, not the source of identity. This is not giving up the desire. It is placing the desire in the right order. The state first, the channel second. That is authority. You see, a man with inner authority does not need to control every actor in the play. He knows the ending he accepts. Then he allows the actors to move. This is why so much mental strain is unnecessary. You are trying to direct every footstep, every conversation, every delay, every letter, every decision, every person. And all the while, you have forgotten the simplest thing, the end. What is the end? Not how it happens, not who changes first, not which door opens. The end. If you were there, inwardly, what would no longer need discussion? That is the question. Because finality is recognized by what becomes unnecessary. A settled matter no longer requires constant thought. A resolved debt no longer requires nightly calculation. A secure relationship no longer requires surveillance. A completed journey no longer requires maps. A received answer no longer requires wondering whether it will come. So when you say, this matter is settled, do not ask yourself whether you feel dramatic enough. Ask, what would I stop doing if I actually accepted that? Would I stop checking? Would I stop rehearsing? Would I stop arguing? Would I stop asking when? Would I stop planning 10 possible roads? Would I stop reopening the old evidence? That is where the assumption becomes real. Not merely in the sentence, in the cessation of contradiction. This is why the strongest assumption is not the one you shout. It is the one you no longer argue with. Let that become very clear. You may say a sentence softly once and live from it more powerfully than someone who repeats it 10,000 times in fear. The difference is not volume. It is inner agreement. Perhaps you say, it is settled. And immediately another voice says, no, it is not. Fine. Do not panic. You have discovered where the argument is. Do not begin shouting louder. That would only create two voices wrestling inside you. Instead, ask, which one will I feed? The old voice says, but look at the facts. You may answer gently, I have looked at them. Then stop. The old voice says, but nothing has changed. Perhaps nothing more needs to be decided tonight. Then stop. The old voice says, but what if you are wrong? No answer is required. Silence itself can become the end of the argument. You do not have to convince every doubtful thought. A doubtful thought is not a judge. It is a thought. Let it speak and pass. Finality does not mean no contradictory thought ever appears. It means you stop rebuilding your identity around every contradiction. That is a more mature understanding of persistence. Some people think persistence means maintaining one perfect emotional state continuously. That is almost impossible. Human beings move through moods. You become tired. You remember something. You react. You doubt. Then what? If you believe one doubt destroys everything, you make doubt more powerful than assumption. No, persistence means return. Return to the conclusion. Return without drama. Return without punishing yourself. Return without saying, I have ruined it. You cannot ruin what you are willing to choose again. The old state appears. You notice. Then, this matter is settled. And perhaps you say it only once, not 100 times. Once. Then rest. If doubt returns 20 minutes later, return again. Not because the sentence itself is magical, because you are training consciousness to stop making doubt the final word. That is the kind of force you are learning. Final word. Finality. The final word does not have to be loud. In fact, final words are often quieter than arguments. An argument contains many sentences. A decision may contain one. Think of a judge again. The entire case may involve hours of testimony, pages of evidence, objections, questions, argument. Then at the end, one sentence closes it. The power is not in how many words are spoken. The power is in what the final sentence means. Let your assumption become that final sentence, not because you are lying to yourself, because you are deciding which state has the right to close the night. This is very important. Which state gets the final word before sleep? Fear, waiting, lack, rejection, or completion? You may have spent the whole day in uncertainty. Fine. The day is not the final word. You may have received disappointing news. Fine. The news is not the final word. You may have looked at a difficult number. Fine. The number is not the final word. You may have argued with someone. Fine. The argument is not the final word. You choose what closes the inner day. That is why the hour before sleep can become so important. Not because some mysterious clock begins operating, because you are approaching the point where deliberate thought gradually loses its sharpness. What you carry there matters psychologically. If you carry the argument, you fall asleep still arguing. If you carry waiting, you fall asleep still waiting. If you carry finality, you fall asleep from another state. Tonight, I want the final word to be simple. Do not choose a paragraph. Do not choose a speech. Choose something you can feel even when you are drowsy. It is settled. That may be enough. Or, it is done. Or, I am at peace with this now. The exact wording matters less than what happens after you say it. Does the mind immediately begin another trial? Then the words have not yet closed the door. Say them more slowly, not more forcefully. Slowly. It is settled. Then do not rush to the next repetition. Let there be silence after the sentence. The silence is part of the decree. Feel that. The sentence. Then silence. The sentence. Then silence. A strong decree leaves room behind it. A weak decree is often followed immediately by nervous checking. I am secure. Then, am I secure? I am loved. Then, do they love me? It is done. Then, when will I see it? You have reopened the door. Do not condemn yourself. Simply notice. This is what you are learning. How to close without slamming. How to decide without strain. How to let the matter rest. The man who pushes the door thinks movement proves power. The man of finality may appear to be doing nothing, but inwardly he has changed the entire relationship. He is no longer a beggar before circumstance. He is no longer asking the world to decide his state. He has chosen it. That is psychological authority. And psychological authority feels very different from emotional aggression. Aggression is afraid something will resist. Authority does not need resistance to disappear before it knows itself. This is why calm can be stronger than intensity. The calm man is not necessarily passive. He may act decisively tomorrow. He may make a call, write a letter, make an application, end an arrangement, begin another. But the action will come from a different place. Not, I must do this or everything will collapse. But, this is the natural thing to do from where I stand. That is an enormous difference. The first action comes from fear of losing the state. The second expresses the state. And as you become quieter tonight, I want you to stop thinking of force as pressure. Pressure belongs to conflict. Finality belongs to decision. You are not going to overpower life. You are going to stop being divided within yourself. One part of you says, I choose the end. Another says, no. Look at the problem. Tonight, you stop giving both voices equal authority. You may hear both, but only one closes the night. Choose the end, not because the senses agree, not because every doubt disappears, because you decide that the old argument has had enough time. It has argued for months, perhaps years. It has presented every piece of evidence. You know its case. You do not need another hearing. There comes a point when intelligence is not gathering more evidence. It is deciding. Tonight, decide inwardly. This matter is settled. Then let the words become quieter. Perhaps the mind says, settled how? No need. Settled when? No need. Settled through whom? No need. You are returning again to the root. Leave the root. The root belongs to unfolding. The state belongs to you. And if you find yourself thinking of the problem again, do not feel that you have failed. Perhaps you have simply walked back to the courtroom out of habit. Notice where you are, then leave. No closing speech required. No debate. Leave, return to the quiet place. This matter is settled. Then perhaps even that sentence becomes unnecessary for a few minutes. You lie there, nothing happening, nothing moving, no great emotion, yet there is less argument. That is the beginning of finality. Do not underestimate it. The end of argument may feel almost empty at first, because conflict was so busy. Let the emptiness remain. You do not need to fill it with more affirmations. You do not need to entertain yourself spiritually. Let there be nothing, a quiet body, a quiet room, a matter no longer being discussed. This is powerful, a matter no longer being discussed. Can you feel how different that is from trying to force it into existence? No pushing, no pleading, no mental bargaining, only conclusion. And perhaps the conclusion is not yet perfect. Fine. Let it become a little more natural each time you return. The strongest assumption is not the one you shout. It is the one you no longer argue with. Carry that into the night, not as a slogan, as a permission. Permission to stop debating your desire. Permission to stop cross-examining your hope. Permission to stop asking appearance for the final verdict. You have chosen your inward verdict. Let that be enough for now. This matter is settled. Let the sentence become softer. This matter is settled. No need to prove it. No need to force belief. No need to feel extraordinary. Only a little less argument, a little less resistance, a little less need to reopen the case, and then, perhaps, silence. That silence is not weakness. It is finality beginning to feel natural. Desire is not the same as assumption. That distinction may seem small when you first hear it, but it changes everything. Desire says, I want. Assumption says, this is where I stand. Desire says, I hope. Assumption says, I accept. Desire looks towards something. Assumption looks from it. And many people spend years confusing the two because desire can feel so powerful. It can fill the mind. It can keep a man awake. It can make the heart beat faster. It can make one pray, imagine, plan, bargain, plead, and promise. But intensity of desire does not necessarily mean occupation of the desired state. A starving man may think about food all day. His hunger is intense, but hunger is not possession. A lonely woman may think constantly of companionship. Her longing is real, but longing is not belonging. A man may think about money every hour. He may study every opportunity, count every coin, imagine wealth, speak of prosperity, and still remain inwardly the man who is trying to escape insufficiency. This is why I say, desire tells me what I prefer. Assumption tells me where I live. Desire is useful. Do not misunderstand me. Desire is not your enemy. It points, it reveals, it tells you that one state is no longer satisfying and another is calling you. If you desire freedom, desire has shown you something about the state you wish to occupy. If you desire love, it has revealed something. If you desire prosperity, usefulness, recognition, peace, a home, companionship, movement, resolution, Desire has acted like a signpost, but a signpost is not a house. You are not meant to sleep beneath it forever. You read the direction. Then you travel. The trouble begins when a person makes a permanent identity out of wanting. I am the one who wants. I am the one who is waiting. I am the one who is almost there. I am the one who hopes this finally works. And because that identity becomes familiar, the desire remains permanently in front of them, always near enough to think about, never near enough to inhabit. This is psychological distance. You can create it without realizing it. You say, I want money. Listen carefully to the sentence. Who are you in that sentence? The one without the money. You say, I want them to return. Who are you? The one from whom they are absent. You say, I want the opportunity. Who are you? The one still outside it. You say, I want my circumstances to change. Who are you? The one living in circumstances that have not changed. The words are not evil. They are not forbidden. But they reveal a position. And if that position becomes your home, you may continue wanting beautifully for a very long time. This is why I am less interested in what you want than in the person who is wanting it, who is speaking when you say, I want. That is the important question. Perhaps it is the frightened self, perhaps the rejected self, perhaps the exhausted self, perhaps the ambitious self who believes life will begin only after one great achievement. Perhaps the man who thinks wealth will finally make him feel safe. Perhaps the woman who thinks another person's return will finally prove she is worthy of love. Then the desire has become a request for identity. You think you want the object. Perhaps what you really want is to stop being the person you feel yourself to be without it. That is deeper, and that is where assumption becomes important. Suppose you say, I want money. I ask, what would money allow you to feel? Perhaps the answer is relief, security, choice, dignity, ease, enoughness. Now we are getting closer. You may not yet have the visible sum you desire, but you can begin leaving the state of the frightened one now. Not by pretending the account says something it does not say. By refusing to let the account define the whole self. You begin assuming, I am one who is supplied, not as a slogan, as a position. Then the desire for money changes character. It no longer comes from psychological starvation. It becomes something compatible with who you have chosen to be. That is very different. Suppose you say, I want them to return. I ask, what state do you imagine their return would give you? Loved, chosen, secure, wanted, companioned? Then why wait for another person to move before you stop sleeping as the rejected one? This does not mean you control them. It means you stop using their current absence as a definition of yourself. You assume the state of being loved. Then whatever happens outwardly is met by a different person. That person does not beg for every sign, does not interpret every silence, does not place all dignity in one response. The outer circumstance may or may not take the exact shape your anxious mind tried to command. But the identity from which you meet life has changed. And that is the beginning of real movement. You see, the world is not sitting somewhere saying, I know what you desire, but I refuse to give it to you. Life is not a shopkeeper hiding goods behind a counter. It is not teasing you. It is not demanding that you suffer long enough to earn permission. What you continually experience is profoundly connected to the state from which you continually meet experience. So if you say, I want love, but every day you occupy suspicion, every silence will look dangerous. If you say, I want success, but inwardly you occupy inadequacy, every opportunity becomes an examination. If you say, I want prosperity, but you occupy financial fear, every expense becomes evidence. If you say, I want peace, but you continually search for what may go wrong, peace remains a future prize. Desire points one way, identity walks another. Then you say, why is life not responding? Perhaps it is responding very faithfully to the place from which you are asking. This is not blame. Do not use this teaching to accuse yourself. That would simply create another state of failure. I am doing it wrong. I am blocking everything. I ruined it with fear. No, that is merely the old habit wearing spiritual clothing. I am not asking you to judge yourself. I am asking you to observe your position. Where do you live inwardly? That is all. Perhaps you visit fulfillment for 5 minutes. You imagine beautifully. You feel relief. Then you return for the next 10 hours to waiting. Which place feels more like home? That is the question. You can visit a hotel and enjoy the room without calling it home. In the same way, you may visit the fulfilled state during imagination, then return to the old identity the moment the exercise ends. So tonight, I do not want you merely to visit. I want you to become a little more familiar with living there. Not forever, not perfectly, just enough to understand the difference between looking towards something and looking from it. Suppose you desire a new position. Looking toward it says, I wonder whether they will choose me. Looking from it says, what would it feel like to be naturally useful here? Looking toward it says, I hope they recognize my value. Looking from it says, I know what I bring. Looking toward it studies the door. Looking from it begins arranging the room. Do you see? Assumption changes the direction of consciousness. Suppose you desire a home. Looking toward the home imagines the front of the house from the street. You admire it. You want it. You say, one day. Looking from the state of belonging is quieter. Perhaps you imagine leaving your coat in the usual place. Perhaps you know which chair you prefer. Perhaps you notice a small repair that must be made. The home is no longer an object. It is environment. That is assumption. Suppose you desire companionship. Desire may imagine grand declarations. Assumption may imagine an ordinary evening. Someone asks what you want for supper. Someone moves a book you left upon the table. You hear a familiar voice from another room. Nothing dramatic, yet the state is completely different. One is longing for love. The other is living inside its ordinariness. This is why naturalness matters more than intensity. The person who has something does not always feel strongly about it. Possession often becomes quiet. The man who owns his coat does not wake every morning trembling with gratitude that the coat is still his. He simply wears it. The woman who belongs in her home does not ask the furniture each day whether she still lives there. She lives there. The person who is secure does not spend every hour repeating, I am secure. Security has become background. That background is assumption. And this may help you understand why endless desire can be so tiring. Wanting keeps the object in the foreground, always there, always being measured, always needing attention. But when a state becomes assumed, the desired condition can move into the background. It becomes less sacred, less dramatic, more normal. That is not loss of faith. That is often the beginning of possession. You may find one night that you no longer feel as emotionally charged about the desire. Do not immediately fear that you have lost it. Perhaps the hunger is weakening. Perhaps you are less fascinated by absence. Perhaps the thing is beginning to feel possible enough that you no longer need to worship it. Good. Let desire become less magnificent. Bring it down from the altar. Let it enter life. A desire kept on an altar is always above you. A fulfilled condition lives beside you, at your table, in your room, in your ordinary day. This is why I want you to stop making a home in wanting. Wanting is a corridor, useful for movement, terrible for sleeping. You were not meant to drag a chair into the hallway and live there. Pass through. Desire says there. Then assumption says here. That is the movement, from there to here, from one day to now, from perhaps to occupied. Not externally perhaps, in consciousness. That distinction matters. I am not asking you to deny what your eyes see. I am asking you to stop letting sight be the only place from which identity is chosen. You may see one thing and assume another about yourself. The account may be small. You can refuse the identity of permanent insufficiency. The letter may not have arrived. You can refuse the identity of forgottenness. The answer may be delayed. You can refuse the identity of helpless waiting. The opportunity may not yet be visible. You can refuse the identity of exclusion. Facts may describe a moment. They do not need to become your name. This is one of the quiet powers of assumption. It separates circumstance from identity. The old state says, this happened, therefore this is who I am. The new state says, this happened, and I still choose who I am. There is freedom there. Perhaps the present circumstance continues for a little while. You still meet it differently. And because you meet it differently, you begin to act differently, notice differently, speak differently, expect differently, tolerate differently, choose differently. But do not turn this into a mechanical chain. You must calculate. You do not need to ask, if I assume this, which action will appear? Leave that. Just occupy the state. Action will become natural from it. A secure person does not need instructions on how to imitate security every minute. Their decisions begin to reflect it. A loved person does not need a manual for every conversation. A person who feels supplied relates to money differently, without constant coaching. State has consequences. Let them come. Your work tonight is simpler. Notice the sentence, I want. Then ask, who is the one saying it? That question can reveal more than 100 affirmations. I want more money. Who is saying it? The frightened one? The free one? The ambitious one? The ashamed one? The one who simply prefers greater expansion. Not all desire comes from lack. That is important too. A man can desire from abundance. He can say, I would enjoy more, without implying, I am nothing without it. A woman can desire love, without declaring herself incomplete. A person can desire greater work, without despising the present self. Desire becomes lighter when identity is not hanging from the outcome. That is a mature desire. It points, it does not imprison. It says, I prefer this. Then assumption says, and I know who I am while it unfolds. That is strength. If you want the world to respond differently, do not spend the whole night intensifying the want. Change the speaker. That is a beautiful way to put it. Change the speaker. The sentence may be the same. I desire prosperity. But who says it? A frightened man begging for rescue? Or a supplied man expanding? I desire companionship. Who says it? An abandoned person asking to be validated? Or a loved person welcoming more love? I desire success. Who says it? Someone desperate to prove worth? Or someone already inwardly valuable, ready for expression? Same desire, different source, and the source changes everything. This is why the world is not waiting for your desire. Desire itself is not the command, it is the invitation. It tells you what state is calling. Then you answer by becoming, not becoming outwardly first, inwardly. You accept a different location in consciousness, and from there, the desire no longer feels like something that stands over you. You stand with it. You stop saying, my life will begin when this arrives. Your life has already begun. Do not postpone your own identity for an object. Do not say, when I have money, then I will feel secure. When they love me, then I will feel worthy. When I succeed, then I will feel important. When I move, then I will feel at home. Do you see what you have done? You have appointed circumstances as employers of your state. They decide when you may begin. Withdraw that appointment. You begin now. Not perfectly, but now. Security begins before the figure. Belonging begins before the address. Worth begins before applause. Love begins before confirmation. Freedom begins before every condition agrees. Then the outer event becomes expression, not permission. That is the relationship I want you to cultivate. And because you are listening at night, let us make it gentler. You do not need to decide everything. Choose one desire, only one. Let it come to mind without forcing. Then say silently, what do I think this will give me? Wait. Perhaps a word appears. Relief, belonging, security, freedom, recognitions, peace. Then ask, can I stop postponing that state for tonight? Not forever, tonight. Can I lie here as one who is a little more secure, a little more at home, a little less rejected, a little less dependent upon one answer? That is enough. You are moving from desire toward assumption. The object can remain. You are not abandoning it. You are simply refusing to live beneath it. Let it become horizontal with you, not above you, not far ahead, not the judge of whether your life is working. A desire can be loved without being worshipped. A future can be welcomed without being begged. An outcome can be preferred without becoming the owner of your peace. This is what makes assumption quiet. You no longer say, I must have this so I can be someone. You begin to say, I know who I choose to be, and from there I welcome what corresponds. That is a different world already. Perhaps no furniture has moved, no letter has arrived, no sum has changed, yet the speaker has changed. And the world always meets the speaker. So tonight, listen carefully to the voice within, not the volume, the position. When it says, I want, ask where it is standing, then gently move from outside to inside, from waiting to occupying, from longing to belonging, from pleading to preference, from hunger to enoughness. Desire tells me what I prefer. Assumption tells me where I live. Let desire point, then let it rest. You do not need to carry wanting all the way into sleep. You already know what you prefer. The message has been received. Now choose where you live. And for this night, let that place be closer to fulfillment than to hunger, closer to possession than to waiting, closer to peace than to asking. Let desire become quiet. Let assumption become home. There is a subtle way in which a man can postpone his entire life without ever realizing that he is doing it. He does not necessarily say, I refuse happiness. He says, I will be happy. He does not say, I reject security. He says, I will be secure. He does not say, love is not for me. He says, one day I will be loved. He does not say, I shall never prosper. He says, soon I will have enough. And because the sentences sound hopeful, he never notices the hidden command inside them. Not now, later, not here, there, not who I am, who I may become. This is one of the most refined forms of postponement, because it can disguise itself as faith. A man may believe he is thinking positively when he continually says, my day will come. But if his day is always coming, then psychologically it never arrives. Tomorrow becomes a warehouse where he stores everything he is unwilling to permit himself to experience today. Peace goes there, security goes there, love goes there, freedom goes there, prosperity goes there, confidence goes there. And then he wonders why the present feels empty. He has shipped all his treasures into the future. Tonight, I want you to stop doing that. Every time you postpone the state, you give tomorrow a job that only consciousness can perform now. Tomorrow cannot make you inwardly secure. Tomorrow is not here. Tomorrow cannot assume for you. Tomorrow cannot choose your identity. Tomorrow cannot feel your worth. Tomorrow cannot occupy your state. Only you can do that, and only now. This does not mean that every desired outer condition must already be visible tonight. Be very clear about that. I am not asking you to look at an unpaid account and call it paid when it is not. I am not asking you to say that a letter arrived when no letter arrived. I am not asking you to claim that a particular person is in the room when they are not. I am not asking you to falsify facts. Facts and identity are not the same thing. I am asking you to stop postponing the identity until facts grant permission. That is completely different. Suppose the account is still difficult. That may be a fact, but I am permanently insecure is not the same kind of fact. It is a state. Suppose the relationship is unresolved. That may be true in the visible moment, but I am unwanted is a conclusion. Suppose the opportunity has not appeared. That may be the present condition, but I am excluded from success is an identity. This is where I ask you to become precise. Do not lie about the condition. Change the state from which you meet the condition. That is the work. If you say, one day I will be secure, you have made security dependent upon some future arrangement, a certain sum, a certain person, a certain position, a certain event. And until that arrangement appears, you remain inwardly insecure. Then when it does appear, perhaps you are still insecure, because you have practiced insecurity for years. You may receive more money and immediately fear losing it. You may enter a relationship and immediately fear its ending. You may obtain the position and immediately fear being exposed. The outer condition has changed. The inner postponement has not. This is why I say you must not send tomorrow to do today's work. Your task is not to manufacture tomorrow. Your task is to choose the state from which tomorrow will be met. If you choose insecurity tonight, and promise yourself security later, tomorrow will be met by the same one who was waiting. If you choose worth tonight, tomorrow is met by someone else. Perhaps the circumstances are still unfolding, but the one meeting them is no longer psychologically on probation. That changes a great deal. Listen to the phrase, I will be loved. It sounds innocent, but who says it? The one who does not feel loved now. I will have enough. Who says it? The one who feels insufficient now. I will finally succeed. Who says it? The one who sees himself as not yet successful. The future tense can be useful when speaking practically. A train will leave tomorrow. A meeting will occur next week. A letter will be sent in the morning. There is nothing wrong with language. But inwardly, when the future becomes the permanent home of your desired identity, you have created distance. You keep the state ahead of yourself, and then you chase it. Tonight, we stop the chase. Instead of asking, when will I become secure? Ask, what would security feel like as an identity now? Perhaps it does not mean joy. Perhaps it means not rehearsing disaster. Perhaps it means not treating one figure as the whole story of your life. Perhaps it means allowing yourself to lie in bed without solving every financial question before sleep. That is security becoming present, small, real, habitable. Instead of asking, when will I be loved? Ask, what belongs to the identity of the loved person now? Perhaps they do not analyze every silence. Perhaps they do not speak inwardly to themselves as though they are easy to abandon. Perhaps they do not rehearse rejection before it occurs. You can stop some of that tonight. That is not pretending another person has acted differently. It is ceasing to postpone your own state of being loved. Instead of saying, one day I will be successful, ask, what does the successful self no longer need to prove tonight? Perhaps they do not need every imaginary critic to approve. Perhaps they do not mentally audition for rooms they have not yet entered. Perhaps they do not turn one delay into a verdict upon their future. You can stop that now. Not because all success is already visible, because the identity no longer waits for applause to exist. Do you see the difference? This work is more subtle than forcing language into the present tense. A man can repeat, I am wealthy, while inwardly meaning, I desperately hope I become wealthy soon. The grammar says present, the state says future. So do not worship the wording. Listen for the psychological location. Where are you? Still waiting? Still leaning forward? Still measuring distance? Still saying inwardly, perhaps tomorrow? Then tomorrow still owns the state. Bring it back, not the object, the state. You may not possess every outer thing tonight, but you can stop making yourself psychologically incomplete until it arrives. This is one of the greatest freedoms you can give yourself. The world may still contain unfinished business. You need not become unfinished with it. An unanswered letter does not require an unanswered identity. An uncertain decision does not require an uncertain self. A temporary shortage does not require a permanent consciousness of lack. An open question can remain open while you become settled. This is very important for sleep, because night has a strange way of turning tomorrow into a courtroom. You lie down and begin presenting evidence. What if they say no? What if there is not enough? What if the same thing happens again? What if I wake and nothing has changed? And before tomorrow has even arrived, you have already filled it with today's fear. Then you say, I hope tomorrow is better. But inwardly you have spent the whole night preparing it to resemble yesterday. Stop sending fear ahead. Do not furnish tomorrow's rooms with today's anxiety. Leave tomorrow empty. Let it arrive without your rehearsal. Your job tonight is not to prepare the future. It is to stop postponing yourself into it. You are here, now, in this bed, in this room, in this moment where no future event can yet touch you. What state will you allow yourself to occupy here? Not what condition will appear by morning. What state now? Perhaps only, I am safe enough to rest. Perhaps I belong. Perhaps I am not waiting for permission to value myself. Perhaps I am supplied in ways I do not yet see. Perhaps I am at peace before the answer. Choose something that does not require you to falsify the visible world. Choose an identity. A man can say, I am secure. not because every condition is perfect, but because he no longer appoints imperfection as ruler of his inner life. A woman can say, I am loved, not because she is controlling another person, but because she refuses to define herself through absence. You can say, I am successful, not because every ambition has been fulfilled, but because success can begin as a consciousness of usefulness, worth, and belonging. This is how assumption becomes honest. It does not deny reality. It refuses to let reality tell the whole story. And tonight, the story does not need a future tense. There is another habit I want you to notice. People say, when I get there, I will relax. When this is resolved, I will sleep. When the money comes, I will breathe. When the person returns, I will feel whole. When I know what happens, I will be at peace. Do you hear the bargain? The nervous system of the old self is saying to the future, you give me the condition, and then I will give myself permission to rest. But what if rest begins first? What if peace is not the reward for resolution? What if it is the state from which resolution is met? That changes everything. Not because peace magically guarantees a particular event, but because you are no longer making your inner life a hostage to events. This is true authority. You stop saying, tomorrow, please give me a reason to become who I want to be. And you begin saying, I will no longer wait for tomorrow to introduce me to myself. That is powerful. Perhaps you have spent years becoming a future person, the future wealthy you, the future loved you, the future confident you, the future free you. You imagine this person walking somewhere ahead of you, always a few steps beyond reach. Tonight, stop following them. Let them turn around and meet you here, not as a perfect person, not as someone without problems, as the identity beneath the outcome. What quality does that future self possess that you keep withholding from yourself now? Calm, dignity, belonging, trust, self-respect, enoughness, permission. Take one, only one. Bring it into the present. You do not need the entire future. You need the state. Suppose the future you is financially secure. What is one thing that self would not be doing in bed? Perhaps they would not calculate the same figure for the 10th time. Then stop calculating. There, the future state has entered the present through behavior. Suppose the future you is deeply loved. What would they not be doing? Perhaps interpreting one's silence as abandonment. Then do not write the ending. There, the state is present. Suppose the future you is established in work. What would they not be doing? Perhaps begging imaginary judges to approve them. Then let the judges go home. There, the state is present. Sometimes assumption is not adding a new thought. It is removing an old postponement. That is why tonight can become so simple. You do not need to construct an enormous future. You need to stop telling yourself, I cannot feel this until later. That sentence is the prison. I cannot feel secure until the money comes. I cannot feel loved until they act. I cannot feel successful until I am recognized. I cannot feel free until the circumstances disappear. Every one of those sentences places the key in the hands of an event. Take the key back. Again, do not confuse this with denial. If action is required, act. If you need to seek work, seek it. If you need to speak with someone, speak. If you need to handle an account, handle it. But action is different when you are not using it to become worthy of your own identity. You can seek work as someone who knows he is useful. You can have a difficult conversation as someone who knows she deserves respect. You can manage money as someone who refuses to become poverty in consciousness. You can wait for an answer without becoming the waiting one. That is the shift, and it begins now. The old habit says, when this changes, I change. The new position says, I change where I stand, and then I meet what changes from there, quietly, without spectacle, without pretending, without asking tomorrow to save you. There is something almost tragic about how easily a man can surrender the present to the future. He says, just one more month, then another, one more year, then another, one more condition, then another. He is always approaching permission, never arriving. Do not let that become your life. The future is useful for appointments. Do not use it for identity. Put meetings there. Put journeys there. Put dates there. But do not store your worth there. Do not store your peace there. Do not store your right to belong there. Do not store your freedom there. Those belong to consciousness, and consciousness is always now. This is why the words I am are so profound when understood correctly. They do not mean you must make wild claims about external facts. They mean that being is present. You cannot say I am tomorrow. When tomorrow arrives, you will still say I am now. The doorway of identity is always present tense because existence itself is present. So if you want to change the identity, do it where identity exists. Now, not in an imagined future where some perfected version of you finally earns the right. That version of you is not more entitled to peace than you are. Why should a future bank balance deserve a peaceful mind more than this moment does? Why should a future relationship deserve a sense of worth more than you do now? Why should a future title, position, home, or achievement be the gatekeeper of your dignity? Take dignity now. Let achievement come afterward. Take belonging now. Let the address come afterward. Take enoughness now. Let the figures develop afterward. Take love as identity now. Let relationships reflect it in their own form and time. This is how the future becomes an expression instead of a permission slip. And as you become drowsier, I want this to grow easier. Do not turn it into another demand. You do not have to feel perfectly secure now. That would be another future standard. You do not have to become a completely new person before sleep. Just stop postponing one thing. 1. Perhaps you have been saying, I will relax when I know. Tonight, I can rest before I know. Perhaps, I will feel worthy when I am chosen. Tonight, I do not need to be chosen before I stop rejecting myself. Perhaps, I will feel safe when there is enough. Tonight, I can release some fear before the number changes. Perhaps, I will be happy when this is over. Tonight, I do not have to suffer continuously until it is over. Feel how humane that is. This is not a command to become superhuman. It is permission to stop using delay as identity. And if tomorrow arrives with the same outer appearance, you have not failed. Do not immediately send the state forward again. Do not say, perhaps tomorrow night. No. The practice is still now. The visible world may move by its own sequence. Your identity remains your present choice. This is where persistence becomes beautiful. Not persistence in waiting. Persistence in refusing to postpone. Again and again. Now. 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 Not with urgency. With simplicity. You return to the place where consciousness actually lives. Not yesterday. Not tomorrow. Now. Let tomorrow be tomorrow. Let it have its letters, its conversations, its accounts, its decisions, its roads. You do not have to live them tonight. You only need to stop giving tomorrow responsibility for who you are. Every time you postpone the state, you give tomorrow a job that only consciousness can perform now. So take the job back, quietly. No announcement, no performance, no need to prove anything. Perhaps just one inward sentence. I do not postpone myself. Or, I am at peace now. Or, I belong now. Or simply, now. Then let the word fade. You are not trying to hypnotize yourself. You are ending delay. The future can keep its events. You keep your identity. The future can keep its timing. You keep your state. The future can keep its unanswered questions. You keep your right to rest. No need to know what tomorrow brings before you stop being absent from yourself tonight. Come back from the future. Come back from one day. Come back from when. Come back from after. Here. Now. This breath. This bed. This quiet moment. Nothing outward needs to be falsely declared. Nothing needs to be denied. Only this. You no longer need to postpone the person you choose to be. Let tomorrow arrive when it arrives. Tonight, do today's work. Choose where you stand. There is a question I want you to ask tonight, and it is more useful than asking, what do I want? You already know what you want. You have thought about it enough. You have named it, imagined it, worried about it, perhaps prayed about it, perhaps spoken of it inwardly so many times that the desire itself has become familiar. So tonight, I do not want to ask you what you want. I want to ask something quieter. If it were done, what would be over? Stay with that. If it were done, what would be over? Not what would begin, not what would appear, not who would call, not how much would arrive. What would end? Perhaps the waiting would end. Perhaps the watching would end. Perhaps the pressure would end. Perhaps the asking would end. Perhaps the nightly calculation would end. Perhaps the need to interpret every silence would end. Perhaps the rehearsal would end. Perhaps the constant question, when, would finally have no reason to remain. This is important because many people imagine fulfillment only through addition. More money, more love, more opportunity, more recognition, more evidence. But fulfillment is often known first by subtraction. Something stops, something becomes unnecessary, a burden falls away, a question loses its urgency, a habit of thought no longer has a reason to continue, and sometimes that disappearance tells you more about the fulfilled state than any grand image ever could. Suppose your financial concern were completely resolved. You may imagine excitement. You may imagine relief. You may imagine seeing a certain sum. But ask again, what would be over? Perhaps you would no longer wake in the middle of the night and begin adding figures. Perhaps you would no longer feel the need to examine the same account before sleep. Perhaps you would no longer turn every envelope into a threat before opening it. Perhaps you would no longer hear the word expense and immediately imagine catastrophe. Perhaps the first sign of fulfillment would not be joy. It would be the disappearance of pressure. That is a powerful clue. The fulfilled state may be quieter than you expect. You may not feel like shouting. You may simply think, that is taken care of, and then move on. That movement is important. The mind moves on because the matter no longer owns it. A problem becomes enormous when consciousness is forced to orbit it. Every morning, every afternoon, every evening, again and again. The fulfilled state often restores your attention to the rest of life. You think about supper, a letter you must answer, a friend, a book, a walk, an ordinary thing. Why? Because the old problem is no longer demanding worship. So if you want to feel the end tonight, perhaps do not try to feel wealth as a mountain of riches. Feel the absence of financial fear. Feel the ordinary quiet that would remain if the pressure had ended. That may take you closer to possession. Suppose the desire concerns love. Again, do not rush toward the romantic picture. Ask, if love were secure, what would be over? Perhaps the interpretation of every silence. Perhaps the habit of listening for rejection in an ordinary tone. Perhaps the need to replay conversations and ask whether you said too much. Perhaps the fear that one quiet hour means something has changed. Perhaps the compulsion to test affection. Perhaps the inner audition. Am I enough? Am I wanted? Will they remain? Would those questions still occupy so much space if love felt secure? Perhaps not. Then secure love may be recognized not by constant romance, but by the end of surveillance. That is a beautiful word for this, surveillance. Many people do not live love, they monitor it. They monitor the other person's words, their expressions, their absences, their moods. They gather evidence, and because they are gathering evidence, they never rest in possession. They live as investigators, but the loved person does not need to investigate every moment. Love becomes something in which ordinary life can happen. One person may be tired, one may be quiet, one may be busy, and the whole structure does not collapse inwardly. That is the end you are looking for, not only the presence of affection, the disappearance of fear around affection. If it were done, what would be over? Perhaps you desire work, a position, recognition, a place where your abilities are used. Ask the question, what would be over if it were done? Perhaps you would stop imagining yourself before invisible judges. Perhaps you would stop rehearsing how to prove your worth. Perhaps you would stop wondering whether someone more qualified is standing behind you. Perhaps you would stop mentally asking every employer, every associate, every important person, do you approve of me? That inner auditioning would end. You would still do your work. You might still prepare. You might still improve. But the preparation would no longer be an attempt to earn existence. You would prepare as someone who belongs. That is entirely different. The man who is established can still learn. He can still make mistakes. He can still work hard. But he is not secretly begging every room to grant him identity. So perhaps the state you seek is not success as a dramatic event. Perhaps it is freedom from the audition. That can begin tonight. You do not need to imagine applause. You may simply imagine what it would feel like if no imaginary audience were present. No one to impress, no one to convince, no one to win over in your mind. You can breathe differently there. That may be your end. Suppose the matter is a home. You think you want the house. Perhaps you do. But if it were done, what would be over? The looking, the comparing, the wondering where you belong, the feeling of being temporary. Perhaps the fulfilled state is the end of psychological homelessness. That is deeper than architecture. A house is walls, rooms, doors. Home is belonging. You may desire a particular place, but what you are really seeking may be the end of feeling like a visitor in your own life. Then imagine that end, not the front door, the absence of the question, where do I belong? Perhaps you feel, here. That may be enough. This question works because desire often hides its true burden. We think we are pursuing a thing, but what exhausts us is not always the absence of the thing. It is the mental activity created around the absence. Waiting, checking, predicting, rehearsing, explaining, defending, planning, watching, asking. The fulfilled state ends much of that activity. So tonight, do not only ask what you would have, ask what you would stop doing. That answer may reveal the state more clearly than any picture. Perhaps you want a certain person to respond. If the matter were resolved, would you still be replaying the last conversation? No. Would you still be imagining 5 possible meanings behind their silence? No. Would you still be preparing what you will say if they finally call? Perhaps not. Then stop some of that now. Not because you are pretending the outer matter is resolved, because you are practicing the inner condition that would exist if it were. Do you see how practical this becomes? The end is not merely a picture. It is a cessation. You can enter the end by ceasing what belongs only to waiting. That is a profound idea. Many people think they must add the fulfilled state. Sometimes you must subtract the waiting state. Stop rehearsing. Stop checking. Stop asking. Stop explaining. Stop preparing for disappointment. And what remains? Perhaps not ecstasy. Perhaps peace. Perhaps neutrality. Perhaps enough quiet for sleep. That is valuable. Do not underestimate neutral peace. The old self may say, but I do not feel thrilled. You do not need to. If a problem that tormented you for months were finally resolved, the deepest feeling might not be excitement. It might be release. A long exhale. A simple, thank God, that is over. And then perhaps even gratitude becomes quiet. Life continues. That is fulfillment. The desire no longer occupies the throne. It has returned to its proper size. This is why I want you to find what ends. The end of pressure may be more truthful than the image of riches. The end of begging may be more truthful than the image of love. The end of auditioning may be more truthful than the image of success. The end of uncertainty may be more truthful than a dramatic vision. The end of the question may be the feeling of the answer. Listen carefully to that. The end of the question may be the feeling of the answer. If you truly knew, would you keep asking? If you truly felt chosen, would you keep checking? If you truly felt supplied, would you keep calculating in fear? If you truly felt secure, would you keep rehearsing disaster? Perhaps not. Then your practice tonight can be astonishingly simple. Stop asking one old question, only one. Perhaps, when will it happen? Let that question end for the night. Perhaps, do they still care? Let it end. Perhaps, how am I going to manage? Let it rest. Perhaps, did I do enough? Enough. Let the question close. You are not required to answer it perfectly. Sometimes the question ends before the answer becomes visible. That is assumption. You live from the psychological consequence of the answer before the senses present the full evidence. This is not denial. It is inner selection. Suppose a man has been waiting for news from a business matter. He has done everything he can do tonight. He cannot call anyone at this hour. He cannot move the office clock forward. He cannot manufacture the letter, yet he can continue to worry. That is one option. Or he can ask, if this were already resolved favorably, what would I stop doing right now? He would stop rehearsing possible disappointments. He would stop imagining the conversation. He would stop watching the clock. Then he can begin the fulfilled state by ceasing those things. He puts down the invisible telephone. He closes the imaginary office. He allows the matter to sleep. That is not passive. It is psychologically intelligent. You are refusing to spend present consciousness on an activity that belongs only to uncertainty. Perhaps the desire concerns money. You have attended to what can be attended to. The figures are what they are. Ask, if this were settled, what would be over? The pressure in the chest, the counting, the imagined catastrophes. Then begin with one of those. You do not have to manufacture the full sensation of wealth. Perhaps simply stop calculating. Leave the arithmetic unfinished. Let the numbers remain where they are. The mind says, but you have not solved it. You answer, not tonight, and you rest. That small refusal may be closer to abundance than another hour of forced prosperity affirmations. Why? Because the supplied person is not spending the whole night behaving psychologically as though ruin is imminent. You are becoming available to the state by ceasing to perform its opposite. That is the principle. Do not perform the opposite of fulfillment all night and then wonder why fulfillment feels distant. If the fulfilled person would not beg, stop begging. If the fulfilled person would not check, stop checking. If the fulfilled person would not rehearse rejection, stop rehearsing. If the fulfilled person would not ask for permission, stop asking. You do not need to do all of it at once. One thing, one habit that would be over if it were done. Let that habit be over for tonight. This creates a beautiful bridge into sleep, because sleep itself is a cessation. The eyes stop watching, the hands stop doing, the body stops traveling. The outer world becomes inaccessible for a while. So let the inner activity follow. Let waiting stop. Let surveillance stop. Let the petition stop. Let the rehearsal stop. You do not need to carry these tasks into sleep. They have no work to do there. Perhaps you have mistaken repetition for faith. You think, if I stop repeating, I may lose the desire. No. A resolved matter does not need constant repetition. You may use words to enter a state, but the fulfilled state eventually makes some words unnecessary. A man who knows where he lives does not repeat his address all night. A woman who knows her name does not rehearse it every hour. Knowing reduces repetition. So if your affirmation has become frantic, ask, what would be over if this were done? Perhaps the affirmation itself. That is revealing. If you were fulfilled, you might not need to say it 500 times. You might say, thank you, once, or nothing, and sleep. Do not turn that into another rule. Words can be beautiful. Repetition can soothe. But know why you are repeating. Are you enjoying the state, or are you trying to prevent reality from escaping? There is a difference. One repetition comes from possession, the other from fear. The fulfilled state has no need to chase its own fulfillment. That is the point. Perhaps tonight you can imagine a room after a meeting has ended. During the meeting there was discussion, questions, arguments, papers, decisions. Then everyone leaves. The chairs remain. The table remains. But the conversation is over. The silence after the meeting tells you something has concluded. Let your mind become that room. The old discussion has had its time. The fear has spoken. The desire has spoken. The doubt has spoken. You have heard them. Now let the room empty. No need to destroy the chairs. No need to burn the papers. Simply no one discussing them. That is what finality can feel like. An empty meeting room. The matter is not being debated anymore. Perhaps a thought enters again. A late visitor. Fine. You do not reconvene the meeting. Let them leave. No new discussion. That image may help you more than trying to create some enormous emotional experience. The fulfilled state is often the absence of further debate. What would be over if it were done? Let the answer become personal. Perhaps I would stop wondering whether I am enough. That is deeper than the job, deeper than the relationship, deeper than the money. then perhaps the true end is not simply a circumstance. It is the end of self-questioning. Can you begin that tonight? Not by proving that you are enough, by refusing to continue the trial. No witnesses, no arguments, no evidence, no verdict from the world. The trial ends. You are enough to rest. Perhaps you say, if it were done, I would stop being afraid of tomorrow. Then let tomorrow remain unwritten. Do not prepare disaster. The future can arrive without your fear escorting it. Perhaps, if it were done, I would stop feeling like I am behind. Then stop comparing yourself to an imaginary schedule. No one is waiting at the finish line with a clock. Rest. Perhaps, if it were done, I would stop asking why it has not happened. Then stop asking. Not because you have an explanation, because the question belongs to the old state. Let it become irrelevant for one night. This is how identity changes quietly, not by shouting a new description, by ceasing the old activity. A person who no longer behaves inwardly like the rejected one has already changed something profound. A person who no longer rehearses poverty all night has changed something. A person who no longer auditions for invisible judges has changed something. A person who can allow an unanswered matter to remain unanswered until morning has changed something. These changes may not impress anyone. Good. They are not performances. They are movements of consciousness. And because this is a sleep experience, let the movement now become softer. You do not need to answer the question intellectually anymore. You have heard it. If it were done, what would be over? Let one answer come. Only one. Waiting, fear, checking, asking, rehearsing, whatever arises, then let that be over for tonight. Not forever, if forever feels too large. Tonight. The waiting can sleep. The checking can sleep. The fear can become quiet. The question can remain unanswered, without being repeated. You can stop before the outer world gives permission. That is the freedom. If it were done, what would be over? Let that old activity lose its job. It has worked enough. The watcher can sit down. The beggar can stop asking. The accountant in the mind can close the book. The imaginary judge can leave the room. The rehearsed conversation can end without a perfect final sentence. Nothing more is needed from them tonight. And notice what remains when they go. Perhaps only this bed, this room, this quiet, perhaps a little space, perhaps a little relief. Do not ask whether the relief is enough. Do not measure it. Let it be small. A small space can still be a doorway. If you feel even slightly less compelled to check, that is movement. If the old question feels slightly less urgent, that is movement. If you can leave one thought unfinished, that is movement. No need to turn it into proof. Just rest there. You are discovering that fulfillment may not first announce itself by what appears. It may announce itself by what no longer needs to happen inside you. No more pleading, no more rehearsing, no more surveillance, no more repeated trial, no more asking the same question of the same silence. And perhaps, for this night, no more waiting. The desire may still exist, but the waiting can end before the desire becomes visible. That is the mystery. You can want and still rest. You can prefer and still be complete. You can welcome change without living as the one who is unfinished until change arrives. So ask one last time, very softly, if it were done, what would be over? Then let that thing end. Not with force, with permission. The pressure can end. The question can end. The rehearsal can end. The night does not need them, and neither do you, for these next hours. Now I want you to notice something very simple, because this is where many people make the imaginal act far more difficult than it needs to be. They try to feel the moment before receiving. They try to create excitement. They try to make the heart race. They imagine the letter arriving, the telephone ringing, the money appearing, the person returning, the door opening, the congratulations being spoken. They attempt to manufacture such intensity that they almost exhaust themselves before sleep. But I do not want the feeling before the victory tonight. I want the feeling after. After the surprise, after the announcement, after the excitement has spent itself, after you have already said thank you, after you have already looked at the evidence. After you have already told the person you wanted to tell, after the matter has stopped being news, what remains then? That is where I want you. Perhaps relief remains, perhaps quiet gratitude, perhaps security, perhaps normality, perhaps nothing dramatic at all. Perhaps only the simple inward knowing. That is taken care of. Do not underestimate those words. A man who has finally received money that was owed to him may be excited for a few minutes. He may look at the check twice. He may smile. He may feel the release of pressure. But he does not spend the next 3 weeks walking around the house crying out, "It happened, it happened." Soon enough, he places the check where it belongs. He attends to what must be attended to. He sits down for supper. He thinks of something else. Why? Because the matter has moved from desire into fact. And fact does not require constant excitement. That is the feeling after the victory. The mind has stopped circling the problem. The body has stopped preparing for danger. The question has lost its job. That is taken care of. Perhaps this is the state you have been searching for while trying to produce something far more spectacular. You thought fulfillment should feel like fireworks. Perhaps fulfillment feels like a quiet room after the guests have gone home. The celebration has happened. The laughter is finished. The glasses are put away. The house is still. And you sit for a moment with the peaceful knowledge that what you hoped for has become part of your life. That quiet aftermath may contain more possession than the celebration itself. Excitement still looks at the event. Completion begins looking away. Understand that carefully. When something first arrives, attention rushes toward it. You look, you touch, you speak about it, you tell someone, you compare before and after, you marvel. But when something becomes truly yours, attention is eventually released. It becomes background. The house becomes where you sleep. The relationship becomes the person beside you. The work becomes your ordinary responsibility. The money becomes something you manage. The answer becomes something you no longer ask about. Possession frees attention. Absence captures it. So if you are lying here tonight trying desperately to feel the excitement of getting, I want you to move beyond it. Go past the moment of arrival. Go past the congratulations. Go past the telephone call. Go past the opened letter. Go past the first embrace. Go past the first morning. Go farther into the state until it becomes quiet. Who are you when the desire has been fulfilled long enough that you no longer stare at it? That is the person I want you to meet. Perhaps you desire financial relief. Do not imagine yourself dancing around a room with money in your hands. You may, if that comes naturally, but it is not necessary. Imagine instead an ordinary evening after the concern has been resolved. There is a paper on the table. You look at it. Nothing happens inside you. No contraction. No sudden calculation. No story of disaster. You know it can be handled. Perhaps you make a small mark beside the figure. Perhaps you put the paper into a drawer. Then you think about something else. There. That may be wealth more deeply felt than any dramatic vision. The bill did not become wonderful. It simply lost its authority over your peace. That is the feeling after the victory. Perhaps you desire a relationship to become secure. Again, do not force yourself to imagine some magnificent declaration. Go beyond the declaration. Imagine an evening months later. The relationship is no longer a question. The other person is there. Perhaps they ask you something completely ordinary. Would you like tea? Perhaps you answer without thinking much about it. Perhaps they are reading. Perhaps you are tired. Perhaps no one is proving anything. And because no one is proving anything, you know, love has become environment. You are not standing outside of it measuring whether it exists. You live there. That quiet normality is the feeling after. Perhaps you desire a new position or greater success in your work. Do not remain only in the moment when someone tells you that you have been chosen. Go farther. It is an ordinary afternoon. There are papers to attend to. Someone asks for your opinion. You give it. You do not become astonished that they value your judgment. You do not say inwardly, "Can you believe I am finally here?" You simply respond. Why? Because being there has become normal. This is the feeling after the victory. The success is no longer an event. It has become context. Perhaps you desire a home. Do not stop at receiving the key. Go beyond the key. Imagine the key has been in your pocket so many times that you no longer admire it. You return home one evening. You open the door automatically. You place your coat where you always place it. Perhaps you notice that something should be moved tomorrow. Perhaps you cannot remember where you left a book. The dream home is now somewhere you misplace ordinary things. That is wonderful. Do you see why? Because the home has ceased to be sacred distance. It is yours. The extraordinary has become domestic, and domesticity is one of the finest signs of assumption. You can live there. This is what I mean when I tell you not to choose excitement as your only test of success. Excitement is not wrong. It is simply temporary. No human being can remain emotionally astonished by the same fact forever. What you truly possess becomes natural, and naturalness is quieter than excitement. If tonight you attempt to feel tremendous joy and cannot, you have not failed. Perhaps your mind is too tired for joy. Good. Use the tiredness. What would fulfillment feel like to a tired person? Perhaps simply, thank God, I do not need to think about that anymore. There is your state. Perhaps the whole imaginal act is a sigh. Not a forced sigh, a release. The kind of release that comes when someone tells you, it has been handled. You hear the sentence, your shoulders lower slightly. You say, good. Then silence. That silence may carry more conviction than 50 enthusiastic repetitions, because the matter has ended. This is why I want you to choose the feeling after. Before the victory, the mind is active. When? How? Will it happen? What if? At the victory, the mind is excited. It happened. Look, finally. After the victory, another quality appears. Rest. That is where I want you to sleep. Not in anticipation. Not waiting for the knock upon the door. Not listening for the telephone. Not imagining the moment just before the answer. After. Already beyond it. Imagine that the event has happened so completely that tonight is simply another night afterward. There is no reason to stay awake waiting for what has already passed. That changes the entire feeling of sleep. The waiting person remains slightly alert. Even with closed eyes, something within is listening. Perhaps the post will come tomorrow. Perhaps the answer will appear. Perhaps the person will change. Perhaps something will happen. There is tension in anticipation, but the person after fulfillment can stop listening. Nothing needs to arrive tonight. It already belongs to the past, in imagination. That is a powerful way to enter the end. Do not imagine that the desired event is approaching. Imagine that it is behind you. Not behind you because you lost it. Behind you because it happened. That can produce a very different state. Suppose you have been waiting for a decision. Instead of imagining the decision arriving tomorrow, imagine remembering the day it arrived. Feel the distinction. One says, I hope it comes. The other says, I remember when that was uncertain. You have moved beyond it. Perhaps you hear yourself say inwardly, I remember worrying about that. Not with bitterness, almost with surprise. I used to lie awake over that. And now, you do not. The old worry belongs to the former version of you. This is the feeling after. The problem has become something you remember, rather than something you inhabit. Perhaps there is a particular phrase that belongs naturally to this state. That is taken care of. It worked out. That is all settled now. I am glad that is behind me. Choose whichever feels natural, but do not make the phrase a charm. Let it imply an aftermath. If you say, that is taken care of, feel what would no longer need to happen. No more planning. No more pleading. No more checking. No more asking everyone for advice. No more lying awake arranging 10 possible outcomes. Taken care of. Then let the words have consequences inside you. Perhaps the forehead becomes softer. Perhaps the thought ends sooner. Perhaps the mind loses interest. This loss of interest is not failure. It may be evidence that you are touching completion. You see, the old state believes desire must remain emotionally alive at every moment. It says, if I stop thinking about it, perhaps I will lose it. But possession does not require obsession. Think of the things already established in your life. You do not maintain them by thinking continuously about them. You know where you live without repeating your address. You know your own name without affirming it. You know what belongs to you without constantly checking whether it still does. Knowing is economical. It uses fewer words. This is why, as the night progresses, I will often lead you toward less rather than more. Less effort, less repetition, less emotion, less watching, until perhaps only the feeling remains. Not feeling as excitement, feeling as fact. There is a difference between emotional intensity and felt reality. A dream can be emotionally intense and still feel like a dream. An ordinary memory may have little emotion and yet you know it happened. That knowing quality is valuable. Suppose I ask you what you ate yesterday. Perhaps you remember. You do not need to become excited to know it happened. The memory carries a simple sense of past fact. Can you borrow something from that quality? Not pretending that the physical event already occurred, but allowing the imaginal end to have the psychological quality of something settled, known, finished, no debate. That is what I mean. You are moving from "I hope" to "I know the state," from "please" to "thank you," from "when" to "done," from "will it" to "silence." Notice how each movement reduces effort. That is why relief can be more useful tonight than excitement. Excitement may keep you awake. Relief permits sleep. And because this is a night practice, sleep itself can become part of the feeling after. If the matter were resolved, perhaps you would finally allow yourself to sleep. Then sleep now, as though resolution has already given permission. Do not wait for the outer event to earn rest. Rest from the state of completion. Perhaps you have told yourself, "I will sleep well when this is settled." Reverse it tonight. I can sleep as the one for whom it is settled. That is not a bargain with the world. It is an imaginal position, and it may be the simplest way to feel the end. How would your body lie here after the good news had become old news? Would you still be listening inwardly for something? Perhaps not. Would you still be preparing explanations? Perhaps not. Would you still be examining tomorrow? No. Then let some of those activities end. You do not need to know the full feeling. Sometimes we discover the state by noticing what has disappeared. If fear is absent, perhaps security remains. If waiting is absent, perhaps arrival remains. If begging is absent, perhaps possession remains. If checking is absent, perhaps knowing remains. If struggle is absent, perhaps ease remains. Fulfillment may be defined as much by absence as by presence. That is why the after state is so useful. It contains very little of the old machinery. The great event has already happened. The mind has no reason to manufacture it. You are simply living after it. Perhaps tonight you imagine a friend asking, "How did that matter turn out?" And you answer, "Oh, that was settled some time ago." Then the conversation moves to another subject. Do not imagine your friend gasping. Do not imagine a long discussion. Let them say, "Good." Then something else. Why is this powerful? Because the matter is no longer the center of your identity. It is finished enough that ordinary life has swallowed it. That is completion. Or imagine someone asks about your new work. You say, "It is going very well." And then you ask them about theirs. You are no longer the one whose entire consciousness is occupied with being chosen. You are simply there. Or imagine someone asks how you are managing financially. You say, "Everything is in order." And then you speak of something unrelated. The mind has moved on. That is the state. Completion creates space. When a problem is unresolved, it fills the room. When it is resolved, the room becomes available again. Tonight, create some space. You do not need to fill the entire room with the fulfilled desire. Let it be one settled fact among many. Perhaps that is the mistake you have made before. You imagined the desire so enormously that it remained enormous. You made money enormous. You made love enormous. You made success enormous. You made one answer enormous. And because it was enormous, you remained small beside it. Shrink the desire now, not because it matters less, because it belongs. A key in your hand is smaller than a house in your imagination. An ordinary good night is smaller than a fantasy of perfect love. A paid account is smaller than a lifetime of financial fear. A normal working afternoon is smaller than the word success. Let fulfillment become small enough to possess, small enough to put away, small enough to forget for a few hours, small enough to sleep beside. That is naturalness. And when you find the right feeling, you may be surprised by how uneventful it is. Perhaps good, perhaps finally, perhaps thank you, perhaps all right, perhaps no words, only the sense that the search has stopped. Stay with that. The search has stopped. You no longer need to scan the horizon. You no longer need to listen at the door. You no longer need to ask whether life heard you. You no longer need to generate enthusiasm. The event is behind you in imagination. You are afterward. And afterward you rest. This is where I would have you tonight. Not standing before the gate, not hearing the gate begin to open. Already inside, long enough that you have stopped looking at the gate. Not waiting for the letter. Not opening the letter. The letter has been read. Not waiting for the money. Not counting the money. The matter has been handled. Not waiting to be loved. Not celebrating being loved. Love has become ordinary enough for silence. Not waiting for success. Not applauding success. You are attending to an ordinary task in the state of being established. After. Let that word take you away from anticipation. You are after the event. You are in the quiet that follows completion. And if your mind says, but it has not happened yet, do not fight. Remember, you are not falsifying outer facts. You are selecting the psychological end for your imaginal act. You know what the senses report. You are simply choosing what state will have your attention before sleep. For these moments, choose aftermath. Choose relief. Choose the night after the victory, not the night before. There is nothing to prepare for, nothing to listen for, nothing to force. It has become old news within you. And old news does not keep you awake. Perhaps all you need now is one small inward recognition. That is taken care of. Let the words become gentle. That is taken care of. No excitement required. No strain. That is taken care of. Then perhaps, good, and nothing more. Let the mind move away. Let the body become heavier. Let the desired state become ordinary. No need to stare at fulfillment. Let fulfillment become the background from which you rest. The victory is over. The celebration is over. The question is over. The matter is settled. And now there is only the quiet after. Rest there. Tonight, I want to give you something very simple. And because it is simple, you must be careful not to turn it into another object of struggle. I am speaking of a decree, a short inward statement, a sentence you can carry towards sleep without effort. But before I give you the one we will use tonight, I want to remove a mistake that causes many people unnecessary difficulty. There is no magic sentence. There are no secret words which compel life merely because the syllables have been arranged in a particular order. You can spend hours searching for the perfect phrase and still remain in the state of the one who is searching. You can change one word, then another. You can ask whether I am is better than I have, whether done is better than fulfilled, whether now should be added, whether gratitude should come first. Soon you have turned a simple act of assumption into a grammatical examination. And all the while, the real question has been forgotten. What does the sentence do within you? That is what matters. A decree is useful only when it ends the conversation within you. If your sentence begins another argument, it has not yet served its purpose. If you say, I am provided for, and immediately the mind replies, no, you are not, look at the figures, then you may find yourself repeating the phrase more violently. I am provided for. The mind answers again. But look, then you increase the volume inwardly. I am provided for. Now two voices are fighting. One calls itself faith, the other calls itself fact, and the body lies between them, unable to rest. That is not what I want tonight. The decree is not a weapon with which you beat doubt into submission. It is a door you close, quietly, firmly. And once closed, you do not stand with your hand upon the knob all night, wondering whether it will open again. You walk away. That is the spirit of the decree. Perhaps you have used affirmations before. Perhaps you have repeated them in the morning, on the street, in a chair, before sleep. There is nothing wrong with repetition. But repetition without conclusion can become another form of waiting. You repeat because you are trying to get somewhere. You repeat because you fear the state will disappear. You repeat because you secretly believe the first sentence did not take. Then the 10th, then the 100th, and so the repetition itself begins to announce, it is not settled yet. Listen to me carefully. The value of a decree is not in how many times you can say it. The value is in whether the decree begins to make further saying unnecessary. That is very different. Suppose a matter has been legally settled. The clerk does not need to stamp the same document 500 times before believing it is complete. There is one mark, one recognition, finished. That is the quality we are looking for. A decree should carry the flavor of completion, not persuasion, not hope, not emotional violence, completion. This is why the words themselves should be simple. Too many words invite too many questions. If you say, I am now joyfully receiving the perfect solution to every financial concern in the most harmonious and wonderful manner, the sentence may be beautiful, but when you are tired, the mind may stumble over it. It may begin examining each part. Perfect how? Harmonious when? Receiving from whom? Every extra word becomes a possible door for the old mind to reopen. Tonight, we want fewer doors. A short statement, something that can survive drowsiness, something that still means the same thing, even when half the words begin to blur. Perhaps you could say, I am provided for. Beautiful. Perhaps, I am at peace now. Also beautiful. Perhaps, it has been resolved. Very useful. Perhaps simply, thank you. Sometimes gratitude itself implies an end. But for our purpose tonight, I want one phrase. Only one. We will use, it is settled. That is all. It is settled. Do not rush to repeat it. First understand what those words mean. They do not mean, I have figured out how. They do not mean, I can prove it. They do not mean, every person has changed. They do not mean, the visible world already agrees. They mean, I am no longer continuing the dispute within myself. That is the settlement. The old mind may still have evidence. It may have objections. It may have questions. But you are no longer holding another hearing tonight. It is settled. Feel the simplicity of that. No object named. No person controlled. No route specified. No deadline demanded. The phrase does not tell life how to answer. It tells consciousness where to stop arguing. That is why it is so useful. If your concern is money, it is settled. If your concern is a relationship, it is settled. If your concern is work, it is settled. If there is a decision you cannot yet see, it is settled. The phrase is not magical because it can be used for many things. It is useful because it leads you toward one state, finality. And finality is exactly what anxious desire lacks. Anxiety is unfinished. It keeps moving. It asks another question, then another. It opens another drawer, reads another letter, replays another scene. Finality stops movement, not the movement of life, the movement of inner dispute. You may notice, when you first say the words, that the mind wants to ask, what exactly is settled? Do not answer with a long explanation. You know the matter. The mind knows the matter. No speech is necessary. It is settled. Then silence. That silence is not empty. It is the second half of the decree. Remember that. The sentence closes the door. The silence walks away from it. Many people say the words, and then immediately press their ear to the door. Did it work? Do I feel different? Has anything changed? What happens next? They have closed nothing. They are still standing there. Tonight, when you say the phrase, let there be space after it, it is settled. Then breathe. Not deliberately, if you do not wish. Just let the body continue. No need to produce a special sensation. No need to force relief. If relief comes, good. If nothing comes, also good. The decree is not invalid because the body did not immediately become peaceful. You are not ordering yourself to perform peace. You are choosing not to continue the old argument. That alone is enough for the moment. Perhaps the mind returns within seconds. But how can you say it is settled when? Stop. You do not need to hear the rest. Not because the thought is dangerous, because you already know the speech. You have heard it many times. The old mind has made its case. You know the figures. You know what was said. You know what has not happened. You know the circumstances. There is no new evidence at midnight. So why listen to the entire argument again? It is settled. Silence. Perhaps this happens 20 times tonight. That is fine. Do not count. Do not say, I have already repeated it 19 times. Why am I still thinking? That becomes another argument. Each return is simple. The old conversation begins. You close it. It is settled, and eventually something interesting may happen. Not because you forced it, because the mind becomes tired of reopening a door that you refuse to enter. The conversation becomes shorter. At first, perhaps the old thought gives you an entire paragraph. Later, one sentence. Later, only a feeling. Later, perhaps nothing. That is how a decree can become natural. Not through violence, through consistency. There is a difference between firmness and forcefulness. Firmness says, no, I am finished with that. Forcefulness says, I must destroy this thought. Do not destroy anything. You do not need to. An old thought without participation is weak. It survives by invitation. You invite it every time you argue with it. You feed it every time you prove it wrong for 20 minutes. You give it importance every time you panic because it appeared. Tonight, let it appear without ceremony. Then, it is settled, and return to the pillow. Return to the darkness. Return to the simple fact that this moment requires nothing more. This is why a good decree should not sound like begging. Listen to the difference. Please let this work. That is petition. I hope everything changes. That is desire. Maybe it is happening. That is uncertainty. It is settled. That is conclusion. Now, conclusion does not mean emotional hardness. You can say the phrase gently. In fact, gentleness may serve you better before sleep. You are not addressing an enemy. You are not commanding soldiers. You are not shouting into the heavens. You are ending a private conversation. Imagine someone has asked you the same question 10 times. Eventually you might smile and say, it is settled. Not angrily, simply because there is nothing more to discuss. That is the tone. Nothing more to discuss. Feel that. Perhaps the deepest power of the decree is not what it adds, but what it removes. It removes the need for another explanation, another forecast, another internal debate, another round of checking, another imaginary rehearsal. The phrase becomes a boundary. Beyond this point, you are no longer giving the old state unrestricted access to the night. It can knock. You do not need to answer. This is especially valuable before sleep, because the mind often becomes strangely persuasive when the room is quiet. During the day, there are distractions, work, people, noise, movement. But at night, one concern can fill the whole room. A problem that occupied 10 minutes in the afternoon can become enormous at midnight. The mind puts it on a stage, adds lights, repeats the scene, introduces possible futures. Soon you are wide awake inside a situation that is not even happening in the room. This is where the decree becomes merciful, not magical, merciful. It gives you permission to stop. You do not need to solve the entire life before sleep. It is settled. That means I release myself from further discussion for tonight. Perhaps tomorrow practical action will be required. Fine. You can act then. The decree is not an excuse to ignore life. It is a refusal to spend the night rehearsing helplessness. That distinction matters. If there is a letter to write tomorrow, write it. If there is an account to review, review it. If a decision must be made, make it. But do not confuse practical action with psychological torment. The first may be necessary. The second is not. It is settled does not mean I will never act again. It means I will not sleep as though action is impossible and danger is absolute. You are closing the emotional courtroom for the night. And perhaps you are wondering whether the phrase should be changed to match the desire more exactly. Do not become clever. The mind loves cleverness when simplicity threatens to end its occupation. It says, perhaps a more powerful sentence exists. Perhaps Neville would use a different word. Perhaps I need the perfect declaration. No, the perfect phrase is the one you can actually rest from. That is all. If it is settled, feels natural enough to let your mind stop for a moment, use it. If another short phrase later becomes more natural to you, that is fine. There is no sacred vocabulary here. The state is sacred. The words are servants. Never turn the servant into the master. A phrase can only point. It cannot live the state for you. You must allow the meaning to enter. So when you say, "It is settled," ask nothing afterward. Do not immediately ask, "Do I believe it?" That is another test. Do not test the decree. Let it stand. Imagine placing a sealed envelope upon a table. You do not open it every 5 minutes to make sure the contents remain inside. The sealing would become meaningless if you continually broke it. Your decree is like that. Seal the matter, then leave it sealed for as long as you can. Perhaps 5 minutes, perhaps 30 seconds, no matter. When you notice you have opened it again, reseal it without anger. It is settled. You do not scold the envelope. You simply close it. This is persistence in a form that does not exhaust you. And as you become more drowsy, let the words become less precise. At first, "It is settled," clear. Then again, "It is settled," perhaps softer. Later, "Settled." That may be enough. Eventually, the meaning may remain without the sentence. A sense of no further discussion. A sense that the room is closed for the night. A sense that you have put down the papers. That is where words have done their work. You do not need to preserve the words after the state appears. A boat is useful for crossing a river. You do not carry the boat on your back after you reach the other bank. In the same way, the decree carries you from argument toward completion. Once completion is felt, however faintly, let the phrase become quiet. You do not have to keep repeating it out of fear that the feeling will escape. If it fades, return later. Simple. No panic, no ritual, no scorekeeping. I want you to understand how different this is from trying to overpower doubt. You are not saying, "My thought must win." There is no contest. You are saying, "I choose what conversation continues." That is sovereignty of attention. If an old memory begins, you can leave it unfinished. If an imagined disaster begins, you do not need to watch the ending. If the mind starts calculating, you do not need the final number. It is settled. You are learning to end scenes before they become identities. This is powerful because so much suffering is created not by the first thought, but by the continuation. A thought appears. What if they refuse? That is one thought. Then you imagine the refusal, then their face, then your response, then tomorrow, then next month, then what it means about you. 10 minutes later, you have built a world from one question. The decree interrupts the construction. It is settled. Tools down. No more building the unwanted scene. The night is not a workshop for fear. Let it become a place of closure. Perhaps you worry that closure means suppression. It does not. Suppression says, "I must not think this." Closure says, "I know this thought, and I do not need to continue it." That is healthier, more spacious. You are not afraid of the thought. You simply do not employ it. There are thousands of possible thoughts available to you tonight. You are not required to hire every one. Let the old one knock. No vacancy. The matter is settled. And notice how the phrase contains no excitement. That is deliberate. If I told you to repeat, "Something wonderful is happening," you might begin waiting for the wonderful thing. If I told you, "Everything is coming to me now," you might begin watching for arrival. But it is settled, points away from anticipation. It places the event behind you psychologically. The matter is not coming toward you. It has crossed from question into conclusion. That is why the phrase suits sleep. You do not need to remain awake for a settled matter. You can sleep. Perhaps that is the deepest test of the decree. Does it let you sleep? Not immediately, perhaps, but does it move you toward less vigilance, less monitoring, less mental labor? Then it is serving you. A decree that keeps you wide awake with excitement may still belong to anticipation. A decree that allows the mind to release may be closer to completion. Tonight, choose completion. The world has had your attention all day. The figures, the faces, the letters, the conversations, the unanswered matters. They can remain outside the room now. You are not required to carry them all into sleep. One phrase, It is settled. Let it gather them, not by naming each one, by closing the night around them. It is settled. Perhaps money comes to mind. It is settled. Perhaps a person. It is settled. Perhaps work. It is settled. Perhaps some nameless uncertainty about your future. It is settled. You are not predicting. You are not controlling. You are not making claims about another person's will. You are selecting the inner posture from which you will rest. That posture is finished. No more pleading. No more courtroom. No more midnight conference. No more emergency meeting inside the mind. The offices are closed. The papers can remain upon the desk. Morning can attend to morning. Tonight belongs to rest, and the decree belongs to the moment just before rest. Use it lightly. Do not polish it. Do not decorate it. Do not make it mystical. Simple words can carry a profound assumption when the mind stops fighting after them. It is settled. Then silence. Perhaps the silence lasts only a breath. Good. It is settled. Then a little more silence. Good. Do not chase the silence. Let it expand naturally. Soon the phrase may feel less like something you are saying, and more like something you know. That is the movement. From words to meaning. From meaning to rest. From rest to sleep. And if the old argument returns, there is no failure. Close the door again. It is settled. No anger. No effort. No need to explain. A decree is useful only when it ends the conversation within you. So let this one end something tonight. Not the whole outer story. The inner argument. That is enough. It is settled. And now, for a little while, let there be nothing more to say. Do not repeat the words faster than you can feel them. There is a temptation, especially when you are anxious for change, to believe that quantity will compensate for uncertainty. You say the phrase once, and because the outer world has not moved in that instant, you say it again, then again, faster, more urgently. You begin to count repetitions as though heaven were keeping a ledger and would respond when you finally reached the proper number. But I tell you, 100 hurried repetitions can leave you exactly where you began. The purpose of the words is not to exhaust the mind. The purpose of the words is to introduce you to a state. And once the state is alive, the words are allowed to die. Remember that. The words are allowed to die once the state is alive. Tonight, we have chosen a very simple decree. It is settled. Do not turn those 3 words into a drum you must beat through the night. Say them inwardly as though they matter, slowly enough that the meaning can arrive before the next repetition begins. It is settled. Then wait. Not waiting for the universe. Waiting only long enough to notice what the sentence means. At first, perhaps it is merely language. You hear the words inside yourself. It is settled. Fine. That is the first layer. Words. Then say them again, a little more slowly. It is settled. This time, do not listen only to the sound. Let the meaning appear. Settled means the meeting is over. Settled means no further argument is required. Settled means you are not being asked to decide the matter again before sleep. Settled means the papers can be put down. Settled means the door can close. Now the phrase has moved from word into meaning. And then perhaps you say it once more. It is settled. This time, see whether a little relief follows. Not a great wave. Not something theatrical. Perhaps only a fraction of release. A thought that does not need to be completed. A shoulder that no longer needs to hold itself quite so firmly. A question that feels slightly less urgent. That is enough. Word, meaning, relief. And after relief, perhaps you need no further words at all. That is where people often become frightened. The phrase has done its work. Silence begins to appear. And immediately they think, I must keep repeating, or I will lose the state. No. If the words have carried you into rest, let them go. You do not continue knocking after the door has opened. You enter. This is important because repetition can become a disguised form of fear. You say, it is settled. It is settled. It is settled. It is settled. But inwardly the meaning may be, please let it be settled. Please let it be settled. Please let it be settled. Do you see? The lips, or the inward voice, can speak one thing, while the state speaks another. Speed can hide that contradiction. When you repeat rapidly, you may never pause long enough to discover what you actually feel. You rush over the gap because you are afraid of what will enter it. Perhaps doubt, perhaps silence, perhaps the uncomfortable fact that you do not yet feel what the words imply. But that gap is where the real work begins. Let the silence show you where you are. Do not fear it. Say, it is settled. Then silence. Perhaps the mind answers, no, it is not. Good. Now you know what is alive. Do not panic and bury that voice under 50 repetitions. That would be like hearing a knock at the door and turning up the orchestra so loudly that you cannot hear it anymore. The knock has not disappeared. You have only covered it. Instead, recognize it. The old state is speaking. It has spoken many times before. You do not need to fight it. Simply return, more slowly. It is settled. And this time, let the phrase mean, I have heard the objection, and I am not continuing the case. Then silence again. This is much deeper than mechanical repetition. You are learning to let one phrase descend through layers of habit. The first repetition may touch only the surface. The second may reach meaning. The third may begin to alter the posture of consciousness. The fourth may be unnecessary. Do not measure this. I am not giving you a formula of 3 repetitions. I am showing you a direction, from sound toward meaning, from meaning toward feeling, from feeling toward being. And being eventually requires no words. Think of a man entering his own home. He may have used a key to open the door. Once inside, he does not continue turning the key in the air. The key served its purpose. Words are like that. They open, they point, they carry. But if you insist upon carrying the key after the door is open, you may forget to inhabit the room. Tonight, inhabit the room. It is settled. Then let settled become a room. What is the atmosphere there? Less urgency, less mental noise. No need to explain, no need to prepare, no need to convince. Perhaps nothing remarkable. Good. You are not looking for remarkable. You are looking for natural. Imagine a person tells you that a small matter has been completely handled. You trust them. You say, very well. What happens next? Do you repeat very well 1,000 times? No. You go on with your evening, because belief in completion frees attention. That is what I want the decree to do. Free your attention from the matter. If repetition keeps your attention chained to the problem, then repetition has become the opposite of its purpose. This may surprise you. People often think that to manifest something, they must think about it constantly. But constant thought may simply reveal constant concern. A man who has misplaced his wallet may think about it intensely. A man whose wallet is safely in his pocket may forget about it for hours. Which one possesses it? Do not confuse attention with possession. Sometimes possession permits forgetting. That is why I want your words to become quieter, as the state becomes more natural. At first, it is settled, clear, deliberate. Then perhaps, it is settled, softer. Then, settled. Then perhaps no sentence. Only the absence of the old argument. The words are allowed to die once the state is alive. Let them die peacefully. You do not need to keep them on life support. Perhaps you have been told that you must repeat an affirmation until sleep takes you. You may do so if it feels soothing and natural. But do not make a prison of the instruction. If repetition begins to feel like labor, let it stop. The state is the object, not the repetition. Suppose after 5 gentle repetitions, you feel the matter become distant. Then why drag it close again, simply to repeat another sentence about it? You would be reintroducing the very thing you were releasing. Let distance be distance. Let the mind wander towards something ordinary. The pillow, the darkness, the sound of the room, a memory without importance. Then sleep. The state can remain beneath these things without being named. A river continues flowing even when you stop speaking about the river. Your state does not require constant commentary. That is another habit I want you to abandon. The mind narrates everything. I feel better now. Was that relief? Maybe this is the state. I think I am entering it. Am I doing it correctly? There. The observer has returned. Now you are watching yourself instead of resting. Do not narrate the practice. Live it. If relief comes, Let relief come without naming it. If heaviness comes into the body, let it. If the words fade, let them fade. If you forget where you were in the sentence, do not wake yourself to recover it. This is a sleep practice. Forgetting is not an enemy here. Drowsiness is not failure. The sentence does not need perfect pronunciation inside the mind. You do not receive extra power for saying it clearly at the edge of sleep. In fact, as consciousness becomes drowsy, the words may become soft and incomplete. It is settled, then perhaps only. Settled, then perhaps nothing verbal at all. Let that happen. You are not delivering a speech. You are surrendering an argument. There is a difference. A speech requires clarity. Surrender can become silent. Perhaps tonight you say the phrase and suddenly remember the circumstance again. The unpaid amount, the conversation, the person, the unanswered question. Do not think, I have lost the state. You have simply remembered something. A memory does not overturn your decision. Return lightly. It is settled. But say it only after you have stopped fighting the memory. Do not use the decree like a hammer. The memory appears. You see it. Then let your answer be final. It is settled. And nothing more. If you repeat too fast, the phrase can become another way of saying, go away, go away, go away. That is resistance. We are not trying to drive thoughts away. We are allowing them to lose authority. This distinction is subtle and important. A thought can remain present for a moment without ruling you. You can remember a bill and still rest. You can remember a person and still feel loved. You can remember an unresolved event and still occupy completion inwardly. The mind does not need to become blank before the state is yours. Do not wait for perfect mental silence. If silence comes, enjoy it. If thoughts continue, let the decree change your relationship with them. They are no longer instructions. They are no longer emergencies. They are passing sounds in the house of consciousness. You do not answer every sound. Think of a church bell heard from a distance at night. It rings. The sound reaches you, then passes. You do not chase the bell. Let thoughts become like that. A thought rings. It passes. And beneath it, settled, not shouted, almost known. This is how the phrase can gradually become less a statement and more a tone. At first you say, it is settled. Later, you feel settled. That is the transition. Words become tone. Tone becomes state. State becomes naturalness. And once naturalness comes, speech becomes unnecessary. This is why I tell you not to admire your affirmation too much. Some people fall in love with the technique. They collect phrases, one for money, one for love, one for work, one for confidence, one for morning, one for afternoon, one for sleep. Soon they have so many words that consciousness has no room to rest. I would rather give you one sentence that actually ends something. A decree is not valuable because it sounds impressive. It is valuable because you can eventually stop saying it. That is the paradox. The best affirmation is successful when it makes itself unnecessary. You say, I am provided for, until provision becomes assumed. Then you stop thinking about provision every hour. You say, I am loved, until love becomes less of a question. Then you no longer need to announce it. You say, it is settled, until the matter loses its emotional charge. Then the phrase goes quiet. This is how language fulfills itself. It becomes experience. A seed disappears into the soil. It does not remain sitting upon the surface demanding admiration. The seed must disappear to become what it contains. Let the words disappear in the same way. The phrase is planted. Now stop digging it up with repetition born from fear. You do not need to ask every few seconds, is it working? That question is another shovel. Put it down. Perhaps there is one practical test you can use tonight. After you say the decree, ask nothing. See what happens if you allow 5 or 10 quiet breaths without deliberately producing another thought. Do not count the breaths if counting wakes you. Just remain. It is settled. Then rest. If the phrase naturally returns after a while, let it return. Do not summon it like a guard making rounds. Let it rise because it feels pleasant or necessary. Then again, it is settled, slow, complete, and let it sink. Imagine dropping a small stone into deep water. You do not throw 100 stones because you fear the first did not reach the bottom. One stone. You watch the ripples. Then the surface becomes still. That is how I want the decree to enter consciousness. One sentence. A ripple of meaning. Then stillness. If the water becomes disturbed again, another stone may fall. But there is no hurry, no counting, no competition. The night is long enough for simplicity. You have nowhere to reach before sleep. This is another reason people repeat too quickly. They believe there is a destination called the state, and they must arrive there before the body falls asleep. So they hurry. They think, I must feel it before I drift off. Now sleep becomes a race. Do not race sleep. The very hurry contradicts the state of completion. If it is settled, why are you rushing? Let drowsiness arrive at its own pace. Perhaps you feel nothing unusual for several minutes. Fine. You are not waiting for fireworks. Remember what we said before. The feeling after victory is often ordinary. So perhaps the decree produces no emotional wave. Perhaps only a small thought. All right. That can be enough. Do not reject a quiet result because you expected a dramatic one. Sometimes the deepest shifts are unimpressive while they happen. A door closes gently. The room becomes quiet. You do not notice the exact second the noise outside disappears. Then suddenly you realize you have not been thinking about it. That is beautiful. Leave it alone. Do not immediately say, wonderful, I stopped thinking about it, because now you are thinking about it again. Let absence remain absent. This is the art of allowing. The decree begins the movement. Then you stop interfering. Do not be like a gardener who plants a seed and then sits beside the ground shouting instructions. Grow, grow, grow. The soil does not need encouragement every second. Neither does consciousness. Plant, rest, return if necessary. Rest again. That rhythm is far more suitable to sleep. A phrase. Silence. A phrase. More silence. Then perhaps no phrase. This is very different from a stream of affirmations that gives the mind no room to absorb meaning. If words arrive faster than feeling, feeling cannot follow. Imagine someone tells you profound news and immediately speaks 10 more sentences without pause. You may hear the words but not absorb the first announcement. Meaning needs room. Give your decree room. It is settled. What would that mean if true? Do not answer verbally. Let the body answer. Perhaps there is a release behind the eyes. Perhaps no release. Perhaps only less forward movement in the mind. Enough. Again. It is settled. What no longer needs to be done. No need to answer. Let something stop. Again, perhaps, settled. And now even the question fades. This is how you enter deeper. Not by adding, by removing. The first repetition gives you words. The second gives you meaning. The third perhaps gives you relief. Then relief gives you silence. Silence gives you sleep. That is a beautiful progression. But again, do not convert it into law. Do not say, Neville told me exactly 3 repetitions. I am telling you no such thing. I am telling you to listen inwardly. Do not continue speaking after the words have served their purpose. Some nights you may repeat the phrase many times because the mind is active. Other nights, once may be sufficient. You are not a machine. The imaginal act is alive. Treat it as alive. If a child is frightened and you tell him softly, everything is all right, perhaps you say it twice, perhaps 3 times. At some point the child relaxes. Would you continue shouting, everything is all right, into his ear all night? No. You would let him sleep. Treat your own mind with the same intelligence. Reassure. Do not harass. There is something tender about a true decree before sleep. It does not bully the old state. It says, you have carried this far enough. Then, it is settled, and waits. Perhaps the old self needs a moment to believe it can put down its burden. Give it the moment. Do not rush. You may have worried about this matter for months. Why demand that the body release it in 3 seconds? Let the state soften naturally. 1 sentence at a time. 1 layer at a time. No violence. No disappointment. No test. If tonight all that happens is that the old conversation becomes slightly less loud, that is enough. You are moving toward completion. and completion itself has no hurry. The person after the victory is not racing. They have arrived. Let the way you use the words reflect that. Slowly, almost lazily, as someone with nowhere else to get. It is settled. Pause. Perhaps the phrase begins to feel heavy in a pleasant way. Not emotionally heavy. Settled. Like an object placed firmly upon a table. No movement required. It is settled. Then let the phrase stay where you placed it. Do not pick it up immediately. Let it rest. And let yourself rest beside it. If another thought comes, it can pass around the decree. You do not need to chase it. The conclusion remains. Settled. The old story may speak from farther away. Settled. The future may try to call you forward. Settled. The past may try to call you backward. Settled. And eventually even that one word may be too much. Then let it go. This is the point I want you to trust. The words are allowed to die once the state is alive. Let them disappear. Let meaning remain. Then let meaning become so natural that even meaning is no longer being examined. Only rest. No technique. No performance. No counting. No need to remain conscious long enough to complete anything. If sleep comes in the middle of the phrase, let it take you. You do not need to finish the sentence. Sleep may finish what effort cannot. Perhaps you reach only, it is, and then you are gone. Fine. The state does not depend upon grammar. You were moving toward rest. Let rest complete the movement. Tonight, do not fill the night with words. Give yourself enough space to hear what one sentence actually means. It is settled. Slowly. Then quieter. Settled. Then perhaps nothing. Let the words fade when they are no longer needed. Let the argument fade with them. Let the mind stop performing certainty and begin resting in it. And when the silence feels more natural than another repetition, choose the silence. That is not the end of the practice. That is the practice becoming alive. When you say inwardly, it is settled, do not let the words remain only in the mind. Let the body hear them too. For you may declare completion with thought, while the body continues preparing for danger. You may say, it is settled, while the jaw remains clenched, the forehead remains gathered, the shoulders remain lifted, the hands remain tight, and the stomach continues behaving as though some verdict is about to be delivered. Then the words are speaking one language, and the body another. Tonight, I want those two languages to become more harmonious, not by forcing the body, not by commanding it to relax, not by becoming impatient with tension, simply by giving it permission to stop contradicting what the words are saying. It is settled. What would that mean for the jaw? Perhaps nothing dramatic. Perhaps the teeth do not need to hold one another quite so firmly. Perhaps the tongue can rest. Perhaps the mouth no longer needs to prepare an answer for a conversation that is not happening. You may not have noticed how many arguments are stored there. Words you did not say. Words you wish someone else had said. Replies prepared for tomorrow. Defenses against imaginary accusations. The body can rehearse a conversation even when the mind has stopped forming complete sentences. The jaw knows the argument. Tonight, let it forget. You do not need to speak now. No one is asking you a question. No one is standing before you, demanding an explanation. The room is quiet. Let the jaw belong to the room you are actually in. Not the room from yesterday. Not the office from tomorrow. Not the imagined conversation. This room. This bed. This hour. It is settled. And the mouth may become quiet. Now notice the forehead. How often the forehead becomes a desk upon which tomorrow is spread. Figures, plans, possible outcomes, questions. The mind places them there as though the night were an office and you had been appointed to solve everything before dawn. But the office is closed. You are not required to hold tomorrow between the eyebrows. Let the forehead smooth if it wishes. Do not order it. Simply withdraw the work. Nothing to calculate there now. Nothing to decide. Nothing to anticipate. Perhaps one small line of tension remains. Let it remain without giving it meaning. You do not need a perfectly peaceful forehead to be in a peaceful state. You are not performing relaxation. You are ending unnecessary labor. That is different. A man can become tense, trying to relax. He thinks, I must release this shoulder. I must slow this breath. I must empty the mind. Now relaxation has become another duty. No, tonight there is no duty, only permission. The forehead may soften, or it may not. Either way, you have stopped asking it to carry the future. It is settled. Now the shoulders. Many people carry unfinished life in the shoulders. A conversation there, a debt there, someone's opinion there, an obligation there, tomorrow's uncertainty there. The shoulders rise as though the body expects something to fall upon it. But nothing is falling upon you in this moment. Feel the bed beneath you. It is already carrying what the shoulders have been trying to carry. Let the bed do its work. You do not need to hold yourself above it. You do not need to remain slightly ready. Perhaps the shoulders can descend one small degree. Not because I told them to, because the matter is not being fought tonight. If the affair were truly settled, would the shoulders need to stand guard? Perhaps not. Then let them receive the message. It is settled. No guard duty, no burden to lift, no tomorrow to support. Let the shoulders be only shoulders, not shelves, not armor, not proof that you are responsible. You may be responsible tomorrow. Tonight, responsibility can sleep. Now the hands reveal so much. They grip the covers, they curl slightly, they hold themselves ready. Sometimes one hand rests upon the body, as though reassuring it. Sometimes the fingers move faintly, because the mind is still arranging things that cannot be arranged at this hour. The hands are wonderful servants. They write letters, they open doors, they count money, they prepare food, they work, they greet, they hold, they build. But tonight, there may be nothing more for them to do. Let the hands retire from the day. A letter can wait, a door can remain unopened, the coins can remain where they are. The work can remain unfinished until morning. A hand that no longer needs to solve anything can become very still. Perhaps the fingers uncurl. Perhaps the palm becomes heavier. Perhaps the hand simply lies there without assignment. That is enough. It is settled. The hands do not need proof. They do not need to reach toward anything. They do not need to pull tomorrow closer. They can belong to completion before the outer condition appears. This is subtle. The old state often has a gesture of reaching. The body may be perfectly still, yet inwardly everything is reaching. Reaching for money, reaching for the person, reaching for confirmation, reaching for the result, reaching for morning, reaching for sleep itself. Stop reaching, not because desire is wrong, because you cannot rest while leaning toward what you say is already settled. A body at the end does not need to lean toward the end. It is there. Let the hands tell that story. Nothing to grasp, nothing to hold in place, nothing to prevent from leaving, nothing to pull nearer. The hands may be empty and still belong to fulfillment. Now notice the stomach. This is where so many people hold tomorrow, before tomorrow arrives. A letter has not come, but the stomach already reacts to its imagined contents. The conversation has not occurred, but the stomach prepares for the worst line. The bill has not been opened, but the body has already decided what it means. The future becomes sensation before it becomes event. You live tomorrow in advance, and then when tomorrow arrives, you say, I knew I had reason to worry, perhaps, but you also spent the night giving the future a body before it had facts. Tonight, withdraw that body. The stomach does not need to prepare for an event that is not happening. Let it be simply part of the body resting upon the bed. Perhaps it remains tight. Fine. Do not begin another battle. You are not asking tension to disappear immediately. You are simply refusing to interpret it. Tension is not prophecy. A flutter is not an omen. Heaviness is not a verdict. The body can hold an old habit for a while after the mind has chosen another state. Let it catch up in its own time. This is very important. Do not look at the body and say, I still feel tense, therefore I do not believe. No. That would make the body another outer fact you are checking. You would simply replace checking the world with checking the stomach. Do not do that. The body is not an examination paper. It is a companion. Treat it gently. It may have practiced fear for years. It may need more than one sentence before it stops bracing. Give it patience, not because something is wrong, because habit can be slow to leave when it has been useful for a long time. Perhaps the body learned that tension meant readiness. Perhaps it believed that worry kept you safe. Perhaps every night it stood watch while you slept lightly. Tonight you can tell it, without words if necessary. You may stand down. That is enough. You may stand down. The matter is settled for this night. Nothing is approaching. Nothing is demanding an answer. No letter will be read in this bed unless you choose to read one. No meeting is occurring under these covers. No employer is sitting at the foot of the bed. No creditor is in the room. No absent person is standing beside you, requiring interpretation. Those scenes exist only when imagination gives them a temporary body. Withdraw the body. Bring imagination back to where the body actually is. Here, darkness, pillow, weight, quiet. The room does not know your problem. Notice that. The walls are not worried. The bed is not calculating. The blanket is not waiting for a reply. The night has no opinion. You are allowed to join that neutrality. The room can become your teacher. Nothing in it is asking whether you have done enough. Let the body become equally unasked. There is something deeply restorative in allowing the body to stop being a messenger for every fearful thought. A thought appears. What if tomorrow goes badly? Immediately the shoulders lift, the stomach tightens, the jaw prepares, the hands grip. Now the thought has recruited the entire body. One sentence became an army. Tonight, when the thought appears, do not recruit. Let it pass without calling the body to attention. What if tomorrow goes badly? Perhaps the thought comes. Fine. The shoulders need not answer. The jaw need not answer. The hands need not answer. The stomach need not answer. No vote is required. The thought may leave unanswered. That is freedom. The body does not have to participate in every argument the mind begins. Let the body stop contradicting what the words are saying. It is settled. Then feel what would naturally stop if you accepted that sentence for these few minutes. Not forever. Only now. Would the jaw continue its imaginary defense? Perhaps not. Would the forehead continue planning 5 roads? Perhaps not. Would the shoulders continue carrying tomorrow? Perhaps not. Would the hands continue reaching? Perhaps not. Would the stomach continue preparing for a verdict? Perhaps not. Then let one of those things stop. 1. You do not need to relax the whole body. That itself can become another task. Perhaps only the hands. Let the hands be done. Then perhaps the jaw notices and follows. Or perhaps not. No matter. The decree is not measured by muscular softness. It is expressed through permission. I give the body permission to belong to the state I have chosen. That is the idea. You would not invite a guest into your home and then keep every door bolted from fear. In the same way, if you invite completion into consciousness, let the body remove one bolt. A shoulder lowers, a finger uncurls, a breath leaves without being controlled. One small opening. Enough. You may have noticed that when good news finally arrives, the body often knows before the mind finishes its sentence. Someone says, "It has been handled." And before you think anything, something drops inside you. A release, a collapse of effort, a hand unclenches, the breath leaves. You say, "Oh good." That bodily release is not the cause of the good news. It is the expression of what the good news means. Tonight, you are borrowing the expression, not pretending the outer event already occurred. You are giving the body the consequence of your chosen inner conclusion. The consequence is no need to brace, no need to guard, no need to prepare for defeat, no need to hold the whole matter physically. It is settled, and the body may say, "Then I can rest." Yes, that is exactly the message. Then I can rest. Perhaps you have been telling yourself the opposite for years. When it is settled, then I will rest. When the money arrives, then I will sleep. When the person changes, then I will breathe. When the decision comes, then my shoulders can come down. You have made rest conditional upon evidence. Tonight, reverse the order. Rest becomes part of the assumption. If it is settled inwardly, then the body may receive some of the rest now. Not all, some. A small advance from the state of fulfillment. You do not need the entire emotional future delivered tonight. 1 degree of release is enough. If you try to produce more, you may leave the state of assumption and enter the state of effort again. So do not force the shoulders down. Do not command the stomach to soften. Do not make the breath slow because you believe slowness proves something. Let the breath be what it is. It may deepen naturally. It may remain shallow for a while. No matter. You are not measuring. This is crucial for sleep. The moment you begin monitoring the breath, the mind may awaken. Is it slow enough? Am I relaxed enough? Am I entering the right state? No. Let breathing remain beneath your attention. It has known how to continue from the day you entered this world. It does not need instruction from the anxious mind. Let it breathe, and let the decree sit quietly behind it. It is settled, not repeated constantly now, perhaps only felt. The body can hear meaning without language. A child can feel safety before understanding a sentence. A dog can lie down beside its master without a philosophical explanation of trust. The body too understands tone. If your inner tone becomes less urgent, the body may gradually follow. So instead of commanding, relax, let the tone say, there is no emergency. Instead of, calm down, let the tone say, nothing more is required. Instead of, go to sleep, let the tone say, you are allowed to stop. Permission is gentler than command, and gentleness is often more persuasive at night. There is another thing I want you to notice. The body sometimes holds a posture that belongs to an identity. The rejected one may pull inward slightly. The anxious one may hold the chest ready. The burdened one may tighten the shoulders. The waiting one may seem to listen with the entire body. The guilty one may curl inward. The desperate one may reach even while lying still. These postures are not destiny. They are habits of state. Do not judge them. Simply ask, how would the body lie here if it did not need to be that person for the rest of the night? Not forever. The rest of the night. That makes the question gentle enough. How would the body lie here if rejection were not being rehearsed? How would the face rest if no one needed to be convinced? How would the hands rest if nothing needed to be grasped? How would the stomach feel if tomorrow did not need to be lived in advance? Do not force an answer. Let the body imagine with you. This is imagination too, not only pictures, not only voices. Posture can be imaginal. A way of resting can imply a state. The fulfilled man does not always see visions. Sometimes he simply lies differently because the argument has ended. That may be all you need tonight. A different way of lying in the same bed, same room, same circumstances, different occupancy. The world has not yet moved, but the body is no longer rehearsing the old world with the same loyalty. That is significant. Do not demand more. If the old posture returns, let it return. Perhaps 5 minutes from now the shoulders rise again. Fine. Notice. No criticism. Then ask again. Is there anything I need to carry right now? Perhaps the answer is no. Let them drop if they wish. This is returning, not discipline in the harsh sense. A repeated invitation. Come back. Rest here. No need to defend. No need to prepare. No need to solve. It is settled. And then the body may begin to feel heavier. Do not chase heaviness. If it comes, let it come. The bed can seem to receive more of your weight. Perhaps the legs become less distinct. Perhaps the hands feel farther away. Perhaps the face becomes less important. These are ordinary movements towards sleep. Do not make them mystical. Do not say, this must mean the decree has worked. No. Let sleep be sleep. The goal is not to turn every bodily sensation into a sign. That would wake the watcher again. You are leaving the watcher behind. The body can become quiet without being inspected. Perhaps you have spent so much time watching your circumstances that you have also learned to watch yourself. You watch thoughts, watch feelings, watch reactions, watch whether you are in the state. That constant self-observation can itself become tension. Tonight, let observation soften too. At first, yes, notice the jaw, the forehead, the shoulders, the hands, the stomach. Then stop noticing them. You do not need to escort every part of the body into sleep. They know the way. Give the permission and withdraw. That is enough. Perhaps before withdrawing, say once, it is settled. Then let the body answer not with words, but with less effort. One less thing held, one less question carried, one less muscle recruited into tomorrow. That is the response. And if no visible response comes, Still no problem. The body does not owe you a performance. It may be tired. It may be restless. It may need time. Do not make bodily ease another condition for fulfillment. You can be in the chosen state even while some tension remains. A storm may pass over a house while the house still stands. In the same way, sensation can move through you without defining where consciousness lives. Let sensation be weather. The state is home. This distinction will help you enormously. If the stomach tightens, you need not say, I have lost the state. Weather. If the heart beats more quickly after a thought, no catastrophe. Weather. If the jaw tightens again, no failure. Weather. You return home. It is settled. And home means, I do not need to build a life story from this sensation. I do not need to interpret it. I do not need to repair it immediately. I can lie here while it passes. That is real peace, not the absence of every sensation, the absence of war with sensation. And as you stop fighting the body often has less to fight. Very gently now, let the face belong to the night. No expression required. You do not need to look confident in the dark. No one is watching. Let the face stop presenting itself to imaginary people. No smile required. No solemnity. No performance of faith. Just a face at rest. Let the shoulders belong to gravity. Let the hands belong to stillness. Let the stomach belong to this present hour, rather than tomorrow morning. Let the breath belong to itself. You do not own every breath. You receive it. Perhaps that reminds you that not everything must be managed. Some things happen perfectly well when you stop interfering. Let sleep be one of them. Let rest be one of them. Let the state deepen without management. The words have already been spoken. It is settled. Now the body is allowed to become consistent with the meaning, not instantly, naturally. The jaw may understand first, then the hands, then perhaps the shoulders, or none of them in any particular order. No plan, no sequence. The body does not need a lecture, only permission. Permission to stop holding yesterday. Permission to stop preparing tomorrow. Permission to stop defending the old identity. Permission to lie here without a task. This is one of the most intimate forms of assumption, not saying something grand, simply allowing the body to live for a few minutes as though the emergency were over. The emergency is over for tonight. Whatever tomorrow requires can wait for tomorrow. If there is action, there will be action. If there is a conversation, there will be a conversation. If a decision is needed, it can be made in its proper hour. But the body is not required to attend tomorrow's meeting tonight. Send it home. Close the office. Put out the lamps. The papers can remain. No one is working now. The jaw is off duty. The forehead is off duty. The shoulders are off duty. The hands are off duty. The stomach is off duty. And perhaps even the mind can begin to understand that it too has been released. No more watch. No more guard. No more preparation. The decree has been given. It is settled. Let the body stop contradicting what the words are saying. Then let even that instruction disappear. No need to monitor whether the body obeys. No need to wait for a particular feeling. You have given permission. That is enough. Perhaps now only the weight of the body remains, the bed beneath it, the darkness around it, and somewhere, very quietly, the sense that nothing more is required. No effort, no defense, no readiness. The matter can remain where it is. The body can remain here. And here, for this night, is enough. You wanted the world to answer. Now stop listening for the answer. You wanted movement. Now become still. You wanted proof. Now close your eyes before proof arrives. You do not force the world by straining against it. You do not compel life by remaining awake beside the door. You do not make an answer come sooner by asking for it one more time in the dark. You become inwardly finished, and you leave the world alone. That is enough now. No more effort is required. No more argument. No more persuasion. Nothing to chase. Nothing to persuade. Nothing to arrange. Nothing to check. The matter can be settled without another thought. Let that be true for this moment. Not forever. Not for every hour that will ever come. Only now, this moment, this bed, this darkness. The matter can remain exactly where it is, and you can stop carrying it. You have carried it far enough. Perhaps you carried it through the morning. Perhaps it entered your thoughts before you had even fully awakened. Perhaps it followed you through your work, through your meals, through conversations, through quiet moments. Perhaps you placed it down for an hour and then picked it up again. Perhaps you have been carrying it for days, months, even years. But not now. Now there is nothing to carry. Let the body know it is settled. Let the hands know. Let the face know. Let the shoulders know. Let the night know only through your rest. There is nothing you need to announce. No declaration to make loudly. No one needs to hear you. No one needs to agree. The room does not ask for proof. The darkness does not ask for proof. Sleep does not ask for proof. Rest does not ask whether the letter has arrived. Rest does not ask whether the money has come. Rest does not ask whether another person has changed. Rest does not ask whether the opportunity has appeared. Rest only receives you. So let yourself be received. You do not need to hold yourself upright inwardly. You do not need to remain prepared. You do not need to keep one eye open in consciousness, watching for movement. There is no watch to keep now, no post to guard, no gate to monitor. You wanted the world to move. Now let the world move without your supervision. You wanted the answer. Now let the answer come without your listening. You wanted certainty. Now let rest become enough without certainty. Perhaps something in you still wants to ask. But when? No need. Perhaps, but how? No need. Perhaps, but what if nothing changes? No need. The questions are becoming tired. Let them become tired. Do not revive them. Do not answer them. Do not finish them. A question can disappear unfinished. A thought can fade without resolution. A sentence can stop halfway. Nothing is lost. You are not abandoning anything that belongs to you. You are abandoning only the effort to hold it all at once. That is different. The matter may still exist. The desire may still exist, but your grip can end. Let the grip end. The hand does not need to close around the future. The jaw does not need to prepare words. The forehead does not need to hold plans. The stomach does not need to live tomorrow before tomorrow arrives. The shoulders do not need to carry every possibility. Let the body know. Settled. No need to repeat it strongly. Settled. Softer. The word is not a command now. It is almost a memory. Almost something that has already been said enough. Settled. And perhaps even that is becoming too much. Good. Let language become smaller. You have had enough words for one night. The mind has spoken enough. The world has spoken enough. The facts have spoken enough. You do not need another explanation. You do not need another teaching. You do not need another method. You do not need to understand more before sleep. Understanding can rest too. Nothing to solve, nothing to improve, nothing to perfect, nothing to measure. No need to know whether you entered the right state. No need to know whether you felt enough. No need to know whether the decree was convincing. No need to know whether something shifted. No need to know whether anything has begun. You are not watching the beginning. You are resting at the end. The road can remain unseen. The bridge can remain unseen. The means can remain unseen. No map tonight. No plan. No arrangement. You are not the engineer of every event. You do not need to design the route from your pillow. Let the route be dark. You are not traveling now. You are resting. The old self may still want to travel. It may still want to go ahead into tomorrow and inspect everything. Let it become tired too. It has worked enough. The watcher has worked enough. The planner has worked enough. The one who waits has worked enough. The one who worries has worked enough. The one who asks for proof has worked enough. Let them all sit down. No more duty. No more night watch. No more checking the door. No more listening for footsteps. No more imagining the post. No more imagining the telephone. No more imagining the face. No more imagining the number. No more imagining what might happen. The night does not require imagination to keep working. Even imagination can rest now. You do not need another scene. You do not need to picture anything. You do not need to hear anything. You do not need to feel anything special. Let everything become ordinary. A body in a bed. A room at night. A mind becoming quieter. That is enough. Perhaps there is a faint sound somewhere. Let it be far away. Perhaps there is a thought somewhere. Let it be far away. Perhaps the old concern is still present at the edge of consciousness. Let it stay at the edge. Do not bring it closer. You do not need to push it away either. There is no pushing now. That is finished. No more pushing. No more asking. No more watching. It is settled. Rest. Let the words become quiet. Settled. Quiet now. Nothing more to do. Nothing more to become tonight. No answer required before sleep. Sleep before the evidence. There is freedom in that. Sleep before the evidence. You do not need a final sign. You do not need a small movement. You do not need one reassuring thought. You do not need one last confirmation. Let sleep come first. Let proof arrive when proof arrives. Not now. Now. Rest. This is the hour when you can stop demanding that life explain itself. Life can remain mysterious for a few hours. Let it. You do not have to know what is moving beyond your sight. You do not have to know who is thinking what. You do not have to know which event connects to which. You do not have to know whether anything is being arranged. That curiosity belongs to wakefulness. Let wakefulness become distant. There is nothing to inspect in the dark, nothing to follow, nothing to interpret, no sign, no omen, no message. Just rest. You wanted the world to answer. Now leave the world alone. Perhaps that is the deepest form of trust available to you tonight. Not insisting, not demanding, not reminding, not checking, leaving it alone. You have already said enough inwardly. You have already chosen enough. You have already carried enough. Leave it alone. And leave yourself alone too. Do not examine your own mind. Do not examine your own body. Do not ask, am I peaceful? Am I settled? Am I still in the state? No. Let the observer become tired. You do not need to watch yourself resting. Rest. If tension remains, let it remain without meaning. If a thought remains, let it remain without meaning. If a question remains, let it remain without an answer. Nothing has gone wrong. There is no wrong way to become quiet. You do not need to reach silence. Silence is already here beneath the thoughts. Let the thoughts become less interesting. You do not need to destroy them. They can simply lose importance, like voices in another room. At first you hear every word, then only the sound, then not even that. Let it happen by itself. No more management. The matter can be settled without another thought. Let the body know it is settled. Let the hands know. The hands can rest. Nothing to grasp, nothing to hold in place, nothing to pull closer. Let the face know. No expression needed. No confidence to perform. No faith to display. The dark asks nothing of your face. Let the jaw loosen if it wishes. Let the forehead smooth if it wishes. No command, only permission. Let the shoulders know. No tomorrow on them. No burden. No invisible weight. Let the stomach know. No verdict tonight. No future event to live early. Let the body belong to the state of completion without needing to prove completion. That is enough. The room is becoming quieter, or perhaps it is only that you care less about the sounds. Good. The body may be becoming heavier, or perhaps you are simply noticing it less. Good. The mind may be losing its edges. A thought begins, then fades. Another comes. No need to finish. You are allowed to lose the thread. You are allowed to forget what I was saying. You are allowed to stop following the words. There is nothing important coming later that you must stay awake to hear. Nothing is being withheld until the end. The end is already here. Rest. Perhaps the voice continues and you hear only fragments. That is enough. Perhaps only a word. Settled. Perhaps even that fades. Good. No need to recover it. You do not need to remember the phrase. The phrase was only a way to arrive at less effort. If less effort is here, let the phrase go. Do not hold the tool after the work is finished. No more technique, no more practice, no more doing. You are not performing an exercise now. You are sleeping, or approaching sleep, or simply lying quietly. All are acceptable. No need to name the state. No need to call it anything. Names belong to daylight. Let this be nameless. a quiet body, a quiet room, a matter no longer being discussed. That is all. No one is arguing now. No one is proving. No one is persuading. The inner courtroom is empty. The papers remain perhaps, but no one is reading them. The chairs are empty. The lamps are low. The hearing is over. You do not need to return. Not now. Let the whole building become distant. Let the day become distant. Let the problem become distant. Let your name become distant if it wishes. You do not need to remember who you were all day. You do not need to remain the same person through every hour of the night. The identity that worried can become faint. The identity that checked can become faint. The identity that waited can become faint. No ceremony, no goodbye, just less interest, less involvement, less participation. The old self does not need to be destroyed. It can simply become unnecessary. Unnecessary for this moment, unnecessary for sleep. And the one who rests does not need a grand new identity. No title, no claim, no perfect version of you, just the one for whom the matter is finished enough to sleep. That is all. Sleep as the one for whom the matter is finished. Not triumphant, not excited, finished. There is a difference. Triumph looks at what happened. Completion moves on. So move on inwardly, not into another thought, into rest. The victory does not need to be celebrated all night. The answer does not need to be repeated. The conclusion does not need to be guarded. The settled thing can remain settled while you forget it. Let forgetting become permission. You may forget the words, forget the problem, forget the desire, forget the method, forget the whole conversation. Sleep does not need your memory. The body knows how to disappear from your attention. Let it. The mind knows how to lose sequence. Let it. You do not need to escort yourself into sleep. At some point, there will be no one escorting. Good. That is where effort ends completely. And until that point, simply do less. Less now. A little less. No more pushing. No more asking. No more watching. The outer world can wait. The unanswered matter can wait. The morning can wait. The next conversation can wait. Everything can wait except rest. And even rest does not need to be forced. Let it come. No hurry. There is nowhere to arrive. You are already where you need to be. Here. Still enough. Quiet enough. Nothing to chase. Nothing to persuade. Nothing to arrange. Nothing to check. Perhaps the old mind wants one last look. No need. Perhaps it wants one last question. No need. Perhaps it wants one final reassurance. No need. Let reassurance become silence. You do not require a promise before sleep. You do not require certainty before sleep. You do not require evidence before sleep. Sleep before the evidence. Sleep as the one for whom the matter is finished. Let life answer later. Not now. Now. Rest. There is nothing you must hear before you can let go. Nothing I must say. Nothing you must repeat. You have enough. Let the words become fewer. It is settled. Rest. No more pushing. No more asking. No more watching. Rest. The matter can be finished without another thought. Rest. No need to see. No need to know. No need to feel transformed. Rest. Let the hands be still. Let the face be still. Let the mind become less interested. Rest. The old question can remain unanswered. You do not need it. The old fear can remain without a story. You do not need to follow it. The old desire can remain without hunger. You do not need to chase it. Quiet now. The night is enough. The bed is enough. This moment is enough. Nothing more to do. Nothing more to become tonight. No answer required before sleep. No proof. No sign. No movement required. Sleep before the evidence. Sleep before the explanation. Sleep before the bridge is visible. Sleep before you know how. Sleep before you know when. No need to know. The matter is settled enough to rest. That is all. Settled enough to rest. Perhaps now, even settled, is becoming too much. Then let it go. Only rest. The voice may become distant. Let it. The room may become distant. Let it. The body may become distant. Let it. The day may become very far away. Let it. No one needs you for these moments. No problem needs you. No future needs you. No past needs you. Rest. Nothing to hold. Nothing to defend. Nothing to prepare. No more pushing. No more asking. No more watching. Quiet now. Let life answer later. Not now. Now. Rest. It is settled. Rest. Quiet. Sleep.